my video so that you can put a face to the voice, and then I'll switch it off and then get into my presentation mode. Many students and also researchers sometimes struggle with different aspects of scientific writing and communication, ranging from literature review, ranging from literature discovery tools, writing itself, research concept conceptualization, and all these things. And sometimes they are dealing with supervisors who are either too busy to guide or those who are giving feedback that is not actionable. For that reason, training-centered communication trains, empowers, and mentors scholars in all aspects of scientific writing and communication. As already mentioned, I'm Nicholas Outa. I am a research capacity advisor at the training-centered communication. I am an immunologist by training. That my background is in immunology and wetland management. I am at the tail end of my PhD. In fact, my thesis is out for examination, and my research was on my field is on aquaculture production option. My research was on the productivity and nutrient use efficiency of an aquaponic system. So welcome, and today we are going to share different tips on scientific writing and communication. So I will do a presentation, and then after that we'll have a plenary where we will discuss any other things that are there. Feel free to ask questions, and I would also request that in the chat, you just introduce yourself in the chat, maybe your name, your field of study, your level of study, for example, if you're doing PhD or master's, or another graduate, why not? And maybe the university where you are and the country. That will be something great. So yeah, let's start this. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Okay, so basically my screen is visible to everyone. So already, as I said, today we will tackle mostly proposal writing and concept development. Most people have been asking me, Nicholas, sometimes you find students coming and asking, how can you help me get a topic for my research? I think it's a question that some of us have also been faced with. So somebody comes and tells you, hey, I'm looking for a topic to do my research on. How do you deal with that? If somebody tells you they are looking for a topic, let's start from there as we build. How do you deal with that? Or how do you choose a topic for your proposal? How does one choose a topic for their research? Anybody, you can just unmute so that we get things going.
Hello.
Yes, Simon.
Yes, good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yes, to choose a topic for research, I usually consider the area of my interest, the area that aligns with my career. That is where I go for. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else also wants to give their opinion?
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas. Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, so one way of picking a topic can arise from practice, from what you do and the gap you've noticed during practice. Then another area where one can actually get a topic from is from reading previous literature, where you identify the gaps in those literature, and that will form the research gap you intend to fill going forward. So basically from practice and from reading, you can get to know where the gaps in literature are. Then that will form the basis of topic to research on. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think those are valid comments. So basically, you need to identify whether there's a gap or whether there's a genuine problem to be solved, because otherwise it will be difficult for you to convince us that your research is worth doing. Yes, James.
Thank you, Nicholas. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, this is James from Uganda, Makerere University. I would like to say there are two areas which I've liked nowadays to get the topic. And number one, when you attend the conference, you listen what people are talking and be able to see where there is a gap. The second one, which is more important, is have interest to read those special calls, papers. There are journals who give the trend of events in that area or in the area of interest. So when you read through and go through, you always find that they point out key issues of research which you can pick on. So those are the two areas I always start from. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have to agree that everyone else is just talking about identifying a specific gap and a genuine problem to be solved. But we are coming back to that, no problem. That was just a way of starting things off. As I said, here we are going to have a discussion. Mine is to facilitate the discussion. I can't say in any way that I have knowledge of all that is there to be known about scientific writing. I will be lying. I also learn from the people we train, and I also get experience from, because people have different experiences. So mine is partly to share the experience I have, and also facilitate a discussion where all of us can be able to participate, because then that is the only way we can learn from one another. Otherwise, if it becomes a one-man show where you say, okay, I will give content and you listen, it's not going to benefit most of us. It might benefit some people, but maybe not myself or other people. So I also want to learn from you. I think it's interesting that you brought out the fact that when you also attend conferences, you listen to what people are talking about, because then that also guides you within your field, and you say, okay, I'm seeing that this is what is what is contemporary in my field, and I think this could be interesting. So can I dig deeper into this? You also, of course, find sometimes people say, okay, I did my research up to this, and these are the recommendations for further studies. So that also can point you in directions of what you can consider. I think that is what I was asking. What will you consider when starting to write your proposal? So one is favorite subject of study and academic interests. But then there's something that I want to talk about at this point. When people come to me and tell me that I should assist them in deciding on a topic they want their research to focus on, I always tell them I have a problem with that, because it's difficult to settle on a topic because then you need a topic that has a story behind it. So the first thing that I always tell students or any researcher who approaches me and tells me, hey, Nicholas, I want to do my research. Can you help me come up with a topic? I always tell them that is in fact, that should be almost the last part of looking for what you want your research to focus on. The best way is to look for a concept or your research idea. It could be different from the topic, because then the topic, when you are trying to look for a topic, it means you are trying to look for a certain set of words that describe what your study is, or if you want to do research and you are looking for a topic, it means you are looking for a set of words that will describe what your research will be on, which can take a very long time, because then you will be arranging words and deleting them and arranging and deleting, because getting a set of words that describes your idea, if that idea is not already mapped out or not already conceptualized, then you will take a very long time trying to come up with a topic. I always tell people the easiest way to come up with a topic is to first think about a concept. So instead of looking for this as a topic, you need to look at it as a concept. So how do you develop a concept for your research? Because once you have the concept, then coming up with the topic is not going to be difficult, because then it's just describing your concept. You can approach your professor and talk to them about your topic, but then they will ask you the story behind your concept, your topic. They will ask you, why did you decide to do this? then you start saying, oh, well, you know, professor, you are not very clear. But if you have mapped it out, then the topic we are going to talk about has a backstory. So that backstory will help you then develop so many other things, because it will help you develop the statement of the problem. It will help you come up with a justification. It will even help you start identifying a few things like objectives. So that is my advice, that when you want to come up with a topic, fine, the interest is important. Also, the topic should also resonate, should be relevant to your field of study. I think that is one of the things that one of the speakers already said. Because if you want to get, if your degree is for the award of a degree, maybe if it's for the award of a degree, or maybe a PhD or a master's, or a degree in aquaculture, for example, and then you are doing a research that if somebody looks at it, they think, yeah, this looks like an engineering course, or this research looks like one being done by an engineering student. There's a time I was guiding a researcher who was doing something. She's a linguist, and in fact, a student of literature. And they wanted to do something that is related to contemporary communication platforms. And specifically, their study was supposed to focus on TikTok. Now, the kind of topic they were giving was, if you read, and if she had gone ahead with it, it would be something like not a linguist, but somebody like a social scientist who is doing something else, like community development or something to do with morality. But then we looked at it and said, hey, you are a linguist and you are a student of literature. Why don't we look for a concept that resonates with literature? And when we discussed, she came to realize, hey, I think, yes, that now sounds like, getting a degree in literature. So think about your research in a way that also resonates with your specific degree of study. And how then do I identify this? Go back to your field, look at a specific area within your field, because you could have a very wide field. I'm giving an example. My field generally is aquaculture. Basically, it's fisheries and aquaculture, but then my area of focus is aquaculture. Now, within the field of aquaculture, if I want to identify a topic, I will go back to the field of aquaculture. Then I will look at the broader field of aquaculture. What specific area of aquaculture am I focusing on? Okay, the specific area I'm focusing on is aquaculture nutrition. You see, I've started now narrowing it down. So I'm from aquaculture, then I'm now in aquaculture nutrition. Okay, what aspect of aquaculture nutrition do I want to look at? Then I say, okay, I'm interested in the aspect of fish feed formulation. Okay. So aquaculture nutrition, feed formulation. Okay, so fish feed formulation. What about fish feed formulation do I want to look at? I want to look at alternative protein sources of fish feeds. Okay. And then I start asking myself, what problems are within this? What is it that is known and what is it that is still not known in the area of fish feed formulation, and especially about alternative protein sources? And why is it something that is interesting? You see, when I answer those questions to myself, then I will come up with like a story. So within that story, I can now be able to get certain words that will describe my story, so that when I approach somebody, I tell them this is what my research will focus on, I have a backstory. So if they challenge me, why did you want to do this? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How will you do it? Where will you do it? Why is it important? I have a backstory. So that is the advice, even as we start. And that pretty much summarizes our training today. And I think, I don't know whether we could stop here. Anyway, that was just the beginning, but it's generally the whole concept around it. So when next time somebody talks to you about, okay, I'm struggling to get a topic for my research, tell them you're not struggling to get a topic. Have you conceptualized what you want to talk about? So try to guide them to go back down within their field, a specific area within their field, a specific element within the field, and then they start asking those questions of what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How will you do it? Where will you do it? And then so what? Okay? Once they have that backstory, it's very easy now for you to tell them, hey, you have a very good backstory that is very clear. Can we sit down and try to describe this backstory in like 20 or 21 words? That will be your topic. But then at the beginning, when you are conceptualizing your ideas, I always tell people, don't struggle so much to get like a perfect title. Have a working title that describes your idea. And then as you move along, even your supervisors will keep you guided. They will tell you, okay, I think this does not sound well. Maybe the objectives are, the title does not really reflect the specific variables that you want to tackle. So start by having something that describes your idea. The bottom line is, or what I am saying in short is, don't kill yourself trying to find a perfect topic at the beginning. Try to kill yourself in trying to find a concept. Okay, so map out your idea and find a concept. Once the concept is clear and you have a backstory, it's very easy for you to describe your backstory using a title or using a topic. Okay, now, one guy saying, and I think all of you say, that you need to research before you research. So I don't know what that means, but then it means that in Kenyan universities, I don't know about the university where you come from, but people are not introducing themselves. I wanted to represent, I want to give shout outs to these countries. I'm only seeing Kenya here. I've seen Uganda, Kenya, Uganda. Okay. So I'm seeing mostly Kenya and Uganda. Any other person, just type and maybe so that you represent. You know, I want to, when I'm giving examples, I want to give examples about the different places. So just maybe just do your introduction. I'm seeing also people from different fields so that I know what examples to give. So when we say you need to research before you research, it means that most of the time, rarely do we reinvent the wheel. Most of the time, the wheel is always there. It's just either trying to modify it or trying to, but so it means that you have to do thorough reading. Okay, you have to do thorough reading because it is through reading that you will identify knowledge gaps, for example. It is through reading that you will identify the actual problems in the society. Because in academia, when you are writing your proposal, you are writing your proposal to solve two problems. One is the problem for the industry or for the society, which means is the actual problem. So let's say if the problem is teenage pregnancy in a specific county in Kenya, as an example. So that is an actual problem in the society. That is one part. The second part is the knowledge gap, which is also a problem in academia. So you are solving the problem of that knowledge gap, and also you are trying to solve the actual problem in the society. So these are things that must go into your thinking. But then you can only get to understand them if you have done enough research about this. Otherwise, you will write a title or you will write a concept and then you take it to your supervisor and they will tell you, this is something that has been overstudied. I don't think this is interesting. Now, the other thing that you also need to think about is about, apart from your interest, is also thinking about contemporary issues or the current hot topics within your field. In my field, for example, right now in aquaculture nutrition, mostly people are talking about black soldier fly as an alternative source of protein in the formulation of fish feeds. So if you are in the area of fish feed formulation and you are thinking about alternative sources of protein, you will find that those are viable areas that when you start talking about, people will say, okay, I think this is one thing that most of us are talking about. So you might not really go into BSF or black soldier fly, but you will tell them, hey, my study generally is anchored around the issues of alternative sources of protein in fish feed formulation or in animal feed production. So think about, apart from your interest, think about what is currently a hot topic in your area. Now, let me come to the issue of interest. You have an interest in doing a specific thing, but you are a master's or a PhD student and you are told you are not on a scholarship. Let's assume, like myself. So you're not on a scholarship, you have an interest in doing one thing, but then a professor or a supervisor comes and tells you, hey, there is a project here that wants a PhD student and they will sponsor you for data collection, maybe not paying your fee, but for data collection. And then you are saying, the concept I'm developing would require a lot of money. So that is my interest. But then there's one on this other side where I can now get the chance to collect my data. But the problem is now that project within which you'll be supported has its own objectives to achieve. So you cannot go there and tell them, hey, this is my interest, or whatever you want me to collect is not my interest. So you might end up fitting into the objectives of a specific project, but then that might not really be the exact interest you have. So as a researcher, it means, therefore, that you have to either decide whether you can change and be interested in something else, or if it is possible for you to. I'll give an example. When I was doing my PhD, when I registered for PhD, I really wanted to do what we call an ecopath model, and I wanted to model the ecological impact of Nile perch in Lake Victoria, because this fish has been accused of so many things in Lake Victoria. In fact, we would almost say atrocities. It has been accused of, eating some species of haplochromines to extinction in Lake Victoria. But then I wanted to know what is the exact extent to which this fish is impacting on the ecology of Lake Victoria. So I wanted to specifically know the feeding behavior, the feeding habits, the rate at which it's how much of each species is it consuming, and then I would try to do a model. But then that would be very expensive because I would have to hire boats, I would have to hire fishermen, I would have to do a lot of things and sampling in the lake. Then now a project comes and tells you, hey, we are going to construct an aquaponic system. And within that aquaponic system, we will support you and give you something little, and then you are going to be able to collect your data as you wish. But then ours is focusing on aquaponics, so there's no way we can support you to do your research in Lake Victoria. So you are told, hey, you have to decide, but you've been in the system for quite a long time because you are struggling to pay fee and also struggling to get money for research. So sometimes these things happen. I'm not saying that is what should happen, but I'm just giving experiences. As I said, we share experiences so that we see. So interest is important because you cannot do something you're not interested in. How will you even do literature search, or how will you be enthusiastic about reading this? So the bottom line is you need to do research before you research. So you need to do a lot of reading before you settle on what you want to do. So I think this is mostly summarizes what we were talking about, how to select a research topic. So you need to, it has to be relevant to your field of study. I'm not going to read everything because this recording will be shared, so you can also be able to read others. So it should be a researchable topic. You should be able, the topic should also aim to solve a genuine contextual problem. It should not cause issues in data collection, research before choosing a topic. It should not be broad. When somebody says, I want to look at the impacts of climate change on maize production, what aspect of climate change? Climate change is a big thing, so it should not be too broad. So those are some of the things, and plus what I have just discussed, because I think that is also part of what goes into choosing a topic. Now, when you are choosing your topic, there are certain questions you need to ask yourself. I'm not really going to also talk about each and every one of them, because I have, in my talk, I have tackled most of them. So what is the problem and why should it be studied? So if you don't have a problem, or if your problem is not screaming, then you will have a problem. In fact, your problem with the statement is the problem. Well, yesterday I was having a live TikTok session, and one of the researchers who is in attendance was saying that the greatest problem in research is the statement of the problem, because some people don't know how to structure it, and if it's not clear enough, then you are going to struggle to write any other part, because then if it's not clear, then your objectives are not going to be very clear, because your objectives should reflect your statement of the problem. So we will see how to use what we call a problem tree to try to structure our statement of the problem. But before we get there, one of the questions you need to ask yourself is, what is the problem? Okay. So then you need to do what we call problem identification, then problem prioritization, and then why should it be studied? Then here is where we are going to do our justification. So we know in research there's what we call justification, and there's what we call significance of study. We'll talk about that, if there's a difference or not. But then these are questions you need to ask yourself. You see, in this, it means that we start by asking ourselves, what is the problem? But then there's what is the information that is already available, because we need to know what is already available. Otherwise, we don't want to be providing information, or we don't want to be collecting data to provide information about what is already there. So why is our study even important if we are going to still provide information, or still provide knowledge that is publicly available, or knowledge that is available to people? So why is my study even important? So you also need to conduct literature review just to know what is there. Okay. So then why do we need to conduct this research? So this is how we are going to talk about the objectives and all these things, how to carry out the research, how to collect data, where from to collect data and information. So these are things we need to ask ourselves as we plan. I think those are other things. Now, we are not yet into the actual writing, but then we are still planning. So we started with, we are starting our critical steps. Number one is knowing and analyzing the problem. I think this is partly what I have also talked about. So it is achieved by analyzing the prevailing situation. So go back within your field. You are in the field of accounting, for example. Ask yourself, what specific area of accounting am I interested in? Okay, what specific area of accounting am I interested in? Then you go within accounting and then look for a specific area within accounting. And then say, okay, within this specific area of accounting, what aspect of this specific area am I interested in? This is the specific area I'm interested in. Okay, what elements or what problems or what questions do I want to start, or what is not yet known within this specific area that I am interested in? You say, okay, I think this is not known, this is not known, this is not known. And of the 7 things that you say are not still known, which of them can you tackle in your research, or which of them can you conduct research to provide solutions to, or provide information for? So that is how you go down and so analyze the prevailing situation. You don't want to do research and people cannot relate to what you are doing, because then it's either far-fetched or it is so withdrawn from your topic, or it is something that is, so archaic that someone is no longer interested in it. Okay. It enables formulation of statement of the problem, and we are going to use problem 3 as an example. As we said, the most important part of your proposal development is the statement of the problem. If the problem is not clear, if your statement of the problem is not clear, it means you are struggling to identify the problem. If you are struggling to state that problem, your writing is going to be very difficult. So ask yourself those simple questions. What really is the problem? And as I said, the problem has to be in 2 parts. As a researcher, when you are writing your statement of the problem, make sure it is in 2 parts. The first part is the actual problem that is affecting the society or affecting the industry. Then the second part is the problem that is associated with the knowledge gap. So what is it that we still don't know in academia? Or what is it that we know, but maybe the information requires updating? Or what is it that we know, but then the methodologies still require so where is the knowledge gap? And knowledge gaps can be several ways. One of them could be methodological gap, where you say, okay, there is data out there, but the methods that have been used have had this specific weakness, for example, or a study has been done, but these are the methods that have been utilized, but I want to try a different method to see whether I'm going to get better results or the same results. So that could be, a way of justifying and saying, okay, I'm seeing a gap here. Everyone else has studied this through maybe a longitudinal study, but there's no one who has really tried to, so that could be. Then there is a problem where you could say, okay, there's a gap that this study has been conducted within a specific population or a section of the population, but there's another section of that population that has never been talked about. So maybe you're saying, okay, there's this specific study that has only been done among lactating mothers, but it has never been done among adolescents, or it has never been done among men or stuff like this. So those are also areas within which you can also identify gaps and say, okay, or it could be, a geographical gap. So you say this study has only been done in this specific area, but there's no information that is known about this specific area. And you need to also point out the uniqueness of those areas to warrant the gap that you are talking about. So the gap can be in so many ways, or maybe something was done, but the information that is there needs updating. So the last data or the last publication you are seeing was collected in 10 years ago. And you want to say, okay, 10 years ago is quite a long time. So is it possible for me to do research so that I can be able to update the information that is available? So these gaps, it has to be very clear. Now, the problem tree is just where you have a tree, and in the middle we have what we call the problem. And then the roots are the causes, and then the leaves and the upper parts of the tree are the consequences. You remember, even in English, we always say, what is the root cause? For the root cause, it means that when you are writing this, you have the problem in the middle, and then you say, what is causing this problem? Because this will help you when you are narrating your statement of the problem. You could have it all in your head, but if you don't have it arranged in the form of a problem tree, then you are just going to have everything jumbled up. So that's why I always encourage people, try to use a problem tree, because then from there, you can say, these are the causes, this is the problem, these are the causes of this problem, and these are the consequences. And this is an example. So one example here that we are giving is the core problem that we are looking at is that teenagers do not finish school. So there is the high rate of dropout among teenagers, and we want to know why. So when you are stating your problem, when you are writing your statement of the problem, you need to find the causes of this. Why are teenagers not finishing school? So you start with the first level that parents do not encourage them. So if you can go further and ask yourself, why are parents not encouraging them? So once you get that to the end, then you go to the next main problem again, that maybe, for example, school is not interesting. Why is school not interesting? Then there is need to find employment to support family. Why do they need to find employment to support their family? So you will find the causes of this problem slowly by slowly, and it's a good thing to document them so that when you start now writing them in continuous prose, it's not like they're jumbled everywhere. So you know this one leads to this, and that's what finally ends up causing this problem. So an example, for example, here is where we are talking about pollution in Lake, or not pollution, but maybe you are talking about the decline in the fishes, in the fisheries of Lake Victoria. So when fishermen go out, they don't catch a lot of fish. So the decline in fish catch is caused by several things. So one of them could be pollution. And then you say, okay, one of the things that is causing the decline is pollution. Okay, why is pollution causing a decline? Pollution is causing a decline because of it reduces it affects water quality, and what aspects of water quality that is affected, and all those things. So try to find how these problems link to each other until you get to the core problem. Then after that, you can say, okay, now I want to write the consequences. The consequences will help you justify your study, okay? Because then you will say, okay, if this study is not done, then this is what would be the result of this. Or the study that I'm going to do is going to provide information that can help solve the consequences of this problem, which are 1, 2, 3, and how is your study going to solve it. So I would encourage you to try, and most of the time I just draw it using a piece of paper. Just have a piece of paper and put the problem in the middle and try to branch them out. What is causing this problem? All that. And then you say, what are the consequences? And then link those consequences as much as you can. Like here we have an example that the core problem here is rice productivity is low. So why is rice productivity low? One of them is arable land is very limited. Now we can even ask ourselves, why is arable land limited? Then we branch down there, slowly by slowly, and then we go to the next problem, the next cause, which is irrigation system does not work properly. Why does irrigation system not work properly? One of the reasons is main facilities are not well maintained. The second one is terminal facilities are not well maintained. Why are these facilities not well maintained? We can keep going, so that we find all the possible causes of this problem we are dealing with. Because then when we now start to narrate the problem, it's easier for us now to somebody following to know, how did we get to where we are today? Because that is actually the main reason why we write this statement of the problem. Why did we get here? How did this problem come to be? Okay. Then the other thing, as I said, apart from just narrating the problem and how it affects the society, it's good to narrate the gap in research. Because then if you are doing this for research, then you need to tell us what is known and what is not known. So you need to tell us, okay, studies have focused on ABCD, but there's limited information on this aspect. There could be information on that aspect, but it was done maybe several years ago. And maybe like when you are dealing with an ecological system, you realize a lot can change over 10 years or even after 5 years. So somebody studied this fish in this lake, but then they only studied this fish 10 years ago. So it means that there's a need for updating that information so that we get as latest information as possible. So the problem tree is one that can help you a lot. The second part, apart from after identifying and prioritizing the problem, the second part is concept mapping. And I think I have talked enough about this in the introduction, and I don't think I'm going to talk about it so much, but then I'll tackle a few things. Now, from the main idea or concept of problem, branch out to show how that main problem can be broken down into specific topics, because then this will now help you get what you call the objectives. Now, let us say you want to work on climate change. Remember when I was talking about an example, I was giving an example of somebody telling me that they want to study the impacts of climate change on maize production. Such a big and wide and a very such a big problem, a big topic that you cannot even know, because climate change generally is a big thing. So there are several elements of climate change that you can study. So if somebody says they want to do a research on the impact of climate change on maize production in Kenya, you don't even know what these people they are talking about. So I think it's one of those things that this one is just to showcase how specific it should be when you are talking about your study. And what are the questions you need to ask yourself? As I said, talk about what do you want to do, what do you want to do, why do you want to do it, how will you do it, who will be part of it, and why is it important? I think there's a place where, so what do you want to do? I want to study ABCD, and it has to be very clear. How will you do it? I will do it by conducting interviews, or I will do it by maybe setting up experiments and doing different treatments, or feeding my fish on different diets and then comparing the growth rate. That is the how. Where will you do it? I will do it in a specific location because of reasons A, B, C, D. Maybe it has an existing aquaponic system, or maybe it has favorable conditions or water quality for fish. Who will be part of it, or who will benefit from this research, or who will be affected by this research? Because then the who can take whichever ways. And then why is it important? Why do you want to do it? I want to do it because there's a problem that maybe there's a gap. We still don't know how these two diets perform, or how fish perform when they are fed on these two different diets. So that's a gap that is still there that needs to be filled. So I always tell people, when you're coming up with your concept, as I said at the beginning, don't kill yourself trying to look for a topic at the beginning. Try mapping out your concept. So once it is clear and you are clear of what you want to do, how you will do it, where, who will be part of it, or who will be involved in it, and why is it important, then the last question you need to ask yourself is what we call so what. So what will be the importance of this? I am going to collect data. So what after collecting that data? Now, once that is done, you need to write a very simple and your PhD or master story in very simple language, simple and plain. Don't complicate. At the beginning, just write what you want to do. Make it as clear as possible. First to yourself. So that if somebody asks you, what are you researching on, or what is your research on, you don't start asking, or you don't go around, just fidgeting. You know what you want to do. You can tell them a story in 5 seconds, or you can, not 5 seconds, but maybe in 30 seconds, you can tell them a story about your research, tackling what you want to do, why you want to do it, how will you do it, and why is it, and so what, how important will the research of your study be? The other thing that I always tell people is, you know why it's good to write your PhD story. And also, after that, I always tell people, after writing your general PhD story, write mini stories for each of the objectives. So you have 4 objectives. Write a very short story for each of the 4 objectives, so that you know the story to tell for each objective, because you are going to collect data. If you know that for objective 1, this is the story. For objective 2, this is the story. For objective 3, this is the story. It's easier for you, even as you collect your data and analyze them, you will know whether it is fitting into the narrative of the story you had. And if you find that the story is not about the data conforming to your story, it's about your story. It's about making sure that the story you had at the beginning, still you collect data to tell that story. You find people, you are invited for a conference, and you have a PhD that has 4 objectives, for example. So let me give an example. I had 4 objectives for my PhD. One was talking about the performance, the growth, performance, and yield of tilapia and catfish within an aquaponic system. The second one was talking about crops, the growth, performance, and yield. The third objective was talking about nutrient use efficiency. The fourth one was talking about water use efficiency. Now, if I'm called for a conference, I know which story to take to that conference, depending on the theme of the conference. But if I'm not clear on what story each objective is telling, then it's difficult for me to select which objective to take to that conference. So I always tell people, you need to have, even after writing your general PhD story. And why is it important for us to write our master's or general PhD story? When you are going to do your presentation, you're going to defend your thesis, or you're going to defend your proposal at the beginning. There is the cliche way of starting your presentation, where people will come and say, I am so and so, I am here to present my proposal, or I'm here to present my thesis on this and that. It's cliche. Everybody starts their presentations like that. And there is also where most of the time, whoever is chairing the defense has already introduced you. They will say, our next speaker is Mr. Nicholas Outa. Mr. Nicholas Outa is a master's student from the Department of something. He's here to present to us the result of his study or or his proposal on ABCD. So everything is already said. So why do you want to start even by repeating what already is said? Why don't you start uniquely by telling them this PhD story, by talking about maybe they saying about maybe saying teenage pregnancy is a problem that is persistent in most counties, and especially Siaya County in Kenya because of ABCD. And my proposal, that's why I saw the need to collect data to understand the causes and the consequences of this. And in my thesis, what stood out is that this is the main cause of this, and this is the main consequence of this. I am Nicholas Outa, and here I'm here today to present to you the results of my study on the impacts of teenage pregnancy on something, as I already stated before. So they have seen your story. You have started by telling them like a summary, like your main story, and before you even start your presentation. So that's why I'm telling you, write your PhD or your master's story and practice it so that you can tell it in 30 seconds. Before they realize it, you're already calling them to your presentation. So that is one thing that I want to take home. Then the other thing is when you the third step after identifying and prioritizing the problem, after developing your concept, like the concept mapping, then you need to identify the funding source. For masters and PhD, and even for generally for proposals for funding, you need to know who is going to fund this. Because if you are doing this for funding, you need to think about how you can help the funders, not how they can help you. I gave you an example of you are a student, you are being supported by a specific project that is funding your research. They are funding either your data collection or they are just funding your research in general. It means that as you formulate your objectives must resonate with the objectives of the project, because that is the only way you are going to help them achieve their objectives. So if you find that the source of funding is passionate about, let's say, about infant nutrition, as an example, and you want to go and tell them that yours is going to talk about alcoholism, unless you can convince them how alcoholism is going to be linked to infant nutrition, it's difficult. So as you write your concept, and if you are targeting specific funding sources, make sure that it resonates with their objectives so that they see how they will benefit from your research. Okay, so that's one thing that also you need to think about as you are planning. Okay, now why do we write a research proposal? And I want to go back and ask. I want just to ask you, for example, in the social context, where you date people and then finally you will hear people saying, she proposed to so and so. Why is a proposal in the social context? We'll come back to the academic context, but in the social context, why is a proposal very important? Why do people do proposals? Why do you propose to somebody you've known for a long time? Anyone? Yes, Vincent says to make your intentions clear. Yes, that's true. Any other person who just wants to speak up? Ghana represented, Uganda. Anybody?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes. One reason we usually propose to each other is to understand that we both have the same objective.
Thank you. You could be talking to somebody who is not even ready for marriage and you are assuming. So yes, so that you can confirm whether you have the same way of looking at things or you have the same objectives. Any other person who also wants to give their perspective? Hello? Why is a proposal important? This is somebody we have been dating with for, yes, Rehema says to persuade, which is important, which is true, because then you also need to convince this person that, hey, I think it's a good idea for us to live together. Agatha says for approval. Yes, to indicate that, to give your manifesto, let me just read some of this. To give your manifesto to indicate that you are ready for commitment? Yes. I think all this is true even for even for academic proposals. You want to state your intentions so that your supervisors or yes, it also shows plans of action. Yeah, we also don't want you to assume. So we want to show you that, hey, this is my plan. This is how I want to act on this relationship. I want to move now from just having an idea about marrying you to actually marrying you. It's the same whole idea. So basically, you are showing somebody that, hey, I am now ready to commit. I had an idea in my head, but I now want to move a step further and actualize this idea. Okay, so there is no difference between that and actually what we do in academia. So let me just share again. I was just trying to read the comments here. Okay. So pretty much there is no difference between that. So one of the reasons why we do proposals is to clarify our ideas. So it helps us to clarify our ideas. That's true. You could have an idea and it's jumbled up in your head. Your supervisor or whoever is going to help you with your ideas has no idea how then this will be actualized. So you clarify it to yourself and also to the other people, because when you put it down in writing, even to yourself, it will be clearer. To plan, yes, because then you need to know, when will you be collecting data? What kind of data sets will you collect? How much do I need? Where will I be collecting this data so that I can know maybe how to access those places? All this is important. Also, to develop good writing habits, because then when you are writing your proposal, you already have started writing some parts of your thesis or your final report. Then communicate your proposed research to get advice, which is also important. You are dealing with supervisors and you need guidance from them. It's difficult for them to guide you if you've not communicated your research idea to them. So one of the reasons why you want to do that is to communicate your proposed research idea to them so that you can get advice. The issue, okay, I think these ones are things I have already talked about. So what do you think the reader is looking for in your proposal? Maybe two people can give, when readers are reading your proposal, what do you think they are looking for? So that they can either approve or disapprove your proposal. What do you think they are looking for when reading your proposal? Hello? Put yourself in the shoes of a reader. So you have a proposal to read or to review, or you have sent out a proposal for somebody to read. What do you think they are looking for? Solution to the identified problem. They are looking for solution, not problems. Looking for the problem. Anybody to set boundaries or limit of what you are. Oh, this was about why it is important for you to do research, understand each other, and give you a voice. Okay. The alignment of the methodology with the topic to check whether it is ethically sound. Clarity of objectives. All this is correct. Relevance to the problem. How are you? Okay, they are coming in thick and fast. Looking at the problem and its solution. Just like the social context, the reader wants to see if you mastered your problem and have a path to solution. Yes, we don't want to tell you, hey, you can go to the field. Then we have no idea whether you will be able to pull this through. You want to do gene sequencing, but then you are from the Department of Kiswahili. I'm not saying they cannot do it, but then do you really have the capability to pull this through? They are looking out for objectives, whether they are smart or not, and the methodology, looking for the central theme. My objectives, the objectives, if, okay, so Mumanyi is saying they're looking for how objectives if they are aligning with what they are looking for. Okay, whether the methodology is planned. Okay, so basically, I think whatever has been typed here, but I want one person to speak so that I also hear their voices. And especially a lady. I've not heard a lady's voice here. It is not fair. Any lady who can. Hello? Any lady who wants to contribute? I just, I want to hear a lady's voice. Yes, Valerie.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I think I wanted to say it is important that this proposal is there, and what you are looking for is if they have been able to indicate how they are going to actualize the research and what is it that they are going to do, especially when it comes to the participants in terms of approvals and how they are going to go about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you brought out an aspect that is also very important. So maybe this person is going to deal with, maybe it's going to deal with human subjects, and maybe they need specific kinds of approvals. Do they even know that they need these approvals? Do they even know the ethical considerations that are required for this kind of study? Because then I don't want to approve, maybe I'm the one reviewing your proposal. As an example, or I am your supervisor. I don't want to tell you to go to the field, and then you start, doing things that are not right, and then you create a lot of issues for yourself and for the university. So yes, I think there's nothing much to present on this. You have said this by yourselves. I'm just going to see what is in my presentation here. So one is the significance of your proposal. You've talked about this again, and then there's what we call the feasibility. The proposal must convince the reader that the research is valuable and is realistic and achievable. I think we also don't want to tell you don't want to tell us that you want to look at an impact of something in the whole of Africa and you are doing your master's. It will be, unless you are doing desktop review, it will be difficult for you to go to every single country in Africa and collect that data. There's a time I was reading a proposal, and this was a proposal from a seasoned researcher. And there's an aspect of fisheries that they were looking at. And one of them was is called length at first maturity. So length at first maturity is the length at which like 50% of the population of the fish you are going to catch, you will find them to be mature. And this person wanted to grow fish in a tank and grow them for 3 months. And they were starting with fry, which were 5 grams. And they were saying that after 3 months, they are going to check for, going to study length at first maturity. And this is a fish that matures, it's called labeo. It matures after maybe a year or something. So then that gives you an idea that this person does not really understand what they want to do. So it also gives you a chance to guide them so that you don't approve the concept as is, okay? Now, while assessing or reading the proposal, the reader asks a series of questions that your proposal must provide answers to. So the question says, is the problem worth studying? So how important is this issue? Are the objectives or research questions clearly stated? What contribution to knowledge of the issue will the study make? If for the award of a degree, will the expected research outcome meet the requirements of the degree? You remember at the beginning I said, even if you are interested in a specific topic, go back to your field. Is it relevant to my field of degree within which my degree will be awarded? Because then you don't want your supervisor or you don't want the faculty to say, fine, you did some very good research, but then this sounds like you're doing something in the field of engineering, but you are an agricultural economist. So you must try to link your research as much as possible to your field. Then the other one is, has the researcher thoroughly reviewed documented literature and used it to justify the research? So we want to see where the gap is, and this gap can only be identified through literature review. So you need to convince us that, hey, I have looked through the literature that is there, and I have identified the gap, the gaps that are there. Okay, are the proposed materials and methods appropriate for the study? Okay, so you are writing a proposal, and I'm reading your proposal. One of the questions I'm asking myself, are the methods appropriate for the study? So you are doing an experimental kind of study, but then the methodology is not very clear how maybe the concentrations will be determined, how the growth rate will be measured, how the calculation will be done. So it has to be very clear. Does the researcher have the necessary skills to complete the study successfully? I gave an example. There's a student who maybe does not really have the training on gene sequencing or those analysis of all those complex things, but then they are writing, but they want to do that. You will just easily tell them, hey, do you have the capacity to do this? Okay, are the required resources available? So for example, I am writing a proposal, but then it is, my budget is 1 million. and I'm not sponsored, but then I also don't have that money. So this university will tell us, hey, apart from even that, just even the resources, you want to do a certain kind of analysis that the university cannot afford, or the university does not have the equipment to do that kind of analysis. So these are things that we also look at. Have potential risks been identified and managed? Okay. An example is there's a time we were doing a research on a certain wetland around Lake Victoria. It's called Nyando wetland. So we were looking at, in fact, the project was called Ecology of Livelihoods in African papyrus wetlands. So we were looking at how do the livelihoods of the people around the wetland affect the wetland ecology. So one of the things we were doing was conducting what we call decomposition experiments. So we were taking the plants, the wetland plants, and burying them within the wetland at different distances from the lake and from the river to see the rates of decomposition, and then looking at the organisms that colonize these plants as they decompose over time, so that we see which one contributes most to the breakdown of this organic matter within the wetland system. Just giving an example, don't worry about all those other things. So the problem we had is we did not anticipate that these wetlands get burned. These people burn these wetlands over time, and sometimes there is flooding. So we had buried everything. And then one time we get back to the wetland and the whole wetland is flooded. So you don't even know where you buried and you have 1,000 bags that are buried, and you want to study this over like 1 year. So the entire wetland is flooded. And this flooding occupies that wetland for 3 months. Then you set up experiments where you are measuring the length and the growth rate of wetlands, of papyrus wetlands. Then you go to the wetland and you find one morning you show up there after 1 week, the entire wetland is burnt down. So when you are not clear on these things, so how then do you react when such things happen? So from your literature review, you need to know how the systems work, all these things, so that you can tell, okay, these are the potential risks, and this is how I will mitigate them. Is the timeline feasible? You can't tell me that you want to do a study in 1 month, and I know this is something you cannot achieve in 1 month. It can only be done in a year or two. So these are things we need to think about. Now, we need now to start developing the structure. And this is one thing I need to make it very clear, that I don't want somebody to come out of this training and tell them, and go to your faculty and tell them, we were told that the objectives come before the justification, or we were told that the definition of operational definition of terms must come after the introduction. So if you are telling me you don't know what you are doing, no, go conform to the guidelines of your university or your faculty or your school. Ask them, how should I structure my proposal? Whatever we are doing as TCC is just going to tell you what goes into what section, regardless of how those sections will follow each other. I think that is one thing I want to make clear, so that you know that if I'm writing a statement of the problem, regardless of what part of the proposal it will appear, this is what goes into the statement of the problem. So that when you go back to a university and they tell you, this is the structure of the proposal in this university, you follow that structure, but you know very well that I'm going to write statement of the problem. Okay, this is how the statement should appear. So it's just about the content. Okay, so it's just about knowing what goes into what section. So let's say if you're talking about the background of the study, it does not have to, even if they tell you that in your university the background should come at last after the references, just as an example, stick to what your university tells you, except that now you know that this is what, when I'm writing a background, this is the information that should go into my background, regardless of where it will appear. Okay, so the 3 key elements: what do you intend to do? Why do you intend to do it? How will you do it? Okay, the exact format varies amongst faculties and schools. So your university will have specific guidelines on how your proposal should be formatted. Stick to that. Stick to that. The only thing is, you know what is required. So basically, we have this: the title, the introduction, statement of the problem, rationale or justification of significance of the study, scope and limitations, review of literature, objectives of the research, operational definition of terms, hypothesis or research questions, methodology, time plan, budget, references, conclusions, and appendices, depending on what your university says. So these are just the general parts that are jumbled up everywhere. But then it depends on, as I say, your university will direct you that after the title, this is what comes, this is what comes, this is what comes. So it's clear for you how then you are going to work around it. Now, let's start with the title. Now, the title is a mini abstract of your investigation. And you remember, we talked about the topic and we said, don't kill yourself with the topic at the beginning, okay? Because then the title, you are just trying to describe what your study is about. So you are just going to tell the story that you have already developed. You remember at the beginning, we were talking about concept development. So you are developing a concept, and that concept must tell a story. So it is that story that your title is describing, okay? So it needs to paint, you need to paint a quick picture of the key ideas, okay? So the words should reflect the focus of your proposal. And you must put the most important words first. Very important. If your focus is on let's say, is on growth rate or growth performance of fish that are fed on a specific diet or on two different protein sources. If your focus is on the protein sources and the influence it has on growth, then put the protein sources at the beginning or towards the beginning. If your focus is on growth and how the protein sources influence growth, then put growth towards the beginning. Okay, so we need to be, maybe if you're not unmuted, maybe Kevina, you can help me mute. There are people who are not muted and they're interfering. So the most important thing is make sure you put the most important words towards the beginning of your research, of your title, so that I don't go around looking at what is the main focus. So if your focus is on customer satisfaction based on maybe a certain product or a certain aspect of marketing, for example. So if the focus is on customer satisfaction, make sure I see customer satisfaction before I see the product, or I see customer satisfaction before I see the marketing strategy, for example. But if the influence, if your focus is on the marketing strategy, a specific marketing strategy, and then how that enhances or how it influences customer satisfaction, I want to see the marketing strategy at the beginning, and then you follow with the other things. So that has to be important, because then we place a bit more emphasis on what we see at the beginning rather than what we will see later in the sentence, which is the title. So try as much as you can to put your the most important words at the beginning, so that it reflects the focus of your study. So this is an example. So example one is left-handedness in students and its relationship to learning preferences. The second example is learning preferences in students and the connection to left-handedness. So for those who are reading this, if you are reading it and you don't pay a lot of attention, you might think these people are doing the same thing. It's the same title. But it's not the same thing. The first one is focusing on left-handedness and the relationship it has with learning preferences. So it means that I'm going to, in the first, let's say if my title is the first one, it means I'm going to look for left-handed people. I'm going to look for people who are left-handed and ask them their learning preferences, so that I see, okay, so if somebody is left-handed, these are their learning preferences, so that I see if there is any relationship between left-handedness and learning preferences. But the second one, I'm going to ask people about their learning preferences. And once they tell me, I will then go ahead and ask them, are you left-handed or not? Okay, so this one is left-handedness. The first one is focusing on left-handedness. The second one is focusing on learning preferences. They are not the same. And the data sets we are going to focus on are also not the same. Okay, so the first one, I'm looking at left-handed people and seeing, and after finding they're left-handed, then I'm looking at the learning preferences. The second one, I'm looking at learning preferences, and then once they tell me their learning preferences, I'm asking them, are you left-handed or not? Okay, now, in order to develop a clear title, you must be clear about the focus of your research. So what are you focusing on? Let's say I'm feeding fish on two different diets, and I want to see the performance of this fish on this when they are fed on these two diets. So I want to see how they grow, for example. So if my focus is on the performance of this of these two diets, then I will say, okay, I want to look at how these diets influence the growth. But then if I'm focusing on the growth, like the growth performance, then I will say, okay, I just want to see how fish will grow when they are fed on this diet. So I'm just looking at my focus really is on the growth of the fish. Okay, so the title should be concise and descriptive. Often, titles are stated in terms of a functional relationship because such titles clearly indicate the independent and dependent variables. Okay? Think of an informative but catchy title. An effective title not only pricks the reader's interest, but also predisposes him or her favorably towards the proposal. So if your title is catchy, if your title is clear enough, if your title gives a clear focus of your study, they will not ask you about, okay, what is your focus or what are you looking at? They will see that in your title. This can only happen if you have mapped out your concept very well. Okay, if you have mapped out your concept and it's clear, then it's very easy for you now to write a clear title because you already know what your title is focusing on. Okay, now I think we are not going to do this, but then I want you to go back after this research, after this training, and then go and try to critique your proposal or the title of your proposal that you have. Okay, then you need to identify the important words and see, have you put them at the beginning? Okay, then there's the introductory part of your proposal, which is basically chapter 1 that has so many parts. But then one of the first part is, of course, the background of the study. Okay, so when you're writing a background of the study, basically it provides the necessary background or context for your research problem. How to frame the research problem, perhaps, is the biggest problem in proposal writing. Now, in your background of the study, this is where you are also going to define certain words. I'm not saying you write and define, no. This is where you are going to give us like a global perspective. How, you need to bring the context to this problem. There's a problem I'm solving. The problem I'm solving is teenage pregnancy in Siaya County, Kenya. This is an example. I want us in the background to start giving us like a global overview of the problems associated with teenage pregnancy. So you might need to start by telling us what is teenage pregnancy so that I get to know so that on the onset, I know what teenage pregnancy is. And if there are other terms that you will be using, not other terms, but maybe other specific concepts that you'll be using, this is the place to talk about them so that I get to understand, so that as I go along reading your proposal, I understand, okay, what teenage pregnancy is, for example, the other things. But then in the background, we also need to, when you are giving the context of this problem, like what we call like a small historical background of this problem. How did we get to where we are here? So give a global perspective of what is happening. So globally, this is the challenge with teenage pregnancy, the potential challenges, give statistics. And when you are giving statistics, make sure you cite these statistics, because somebody will tell you, you're talking about like 70% of teenagers drop out of school in Brazil because of this and that. Where did you get that from? That 70%, is it that something you came up with, or did you get it from somewhere? So start by giving us the global perspective, then give us the regional perspective. So in Africa, for example, you give us the aspect about Africa. If you are doing research on East Africa, or if you are doing your research in a country that is in West Africa, give us now the regional perspective. Regionally, what is the problem? And then you keep talking about this problem in a way that by the time I'm done with the background, I understand the historical backdrop of this problem, why this problem is important, a little bit of what other people have done, and a little bit of a gap, so that I also get to know, okay, so this is why this is important. And then also, at the end of your research, you need to now tell us, now, based on what you have narrated, this research, therefore, will try to do A, B, C, D. So I always tell people, people will always ask, there's a specific place where you are going to write the objectives. In your background, at the end of the background, most of the time, it's a good procedure to just give a hint of the general objective. So because you've told us the problem and the background, it's a good thing to now say, this study, therefore, will utilize this methodology, for example, in this specific area, for example, to find a solution to this problem.
Uganda alone, c'est top là-bas.
So that we have an idea. We are already, you've already hinted to us what you plan to do about the problem you narrated. But You remember in the background, here is where we are also looking for what we call your thesis statement, that bold claim. There's always a bold claim that people make. As a researcher, there's always what we call your central question. Okay, so there's a bold claim that you make in your background where you are saying teenage pregnancy has been a problem in Sierra County for in the last decade. So it's a bold claim. So you need to prove. You need to give us evidence. Why are you saying this? Or if you make a bold claim that this aspect of this subject is still not well understood, you need to tell us. You need to clarify. Please mute. Okay. Just checking. Please mute. It's really not just a good thing when other people are talking, and I think it interferes quite a bit with not just the flow of what I'm saying, but also what other people are also trying to follow. So you try to place your research question in the context of either a current hot area or an older area that remains viable. Remember, when you were talking about the problem, in the background here, you are not stating the problem in a lot of details because there's a specific place you're going to do it, but then you need to hint to us why there's a problem and give us a background of this problem and the significant and the magnitude of this problem globally, regionally, and also maybe in the specific county or in the specific area. So remember, in the background, you need to tell us the global perspective, the African perspective, the regional perspective. So maybe in East Africa, you can say, in East Africa, for example, these are the statistics that we have, and then come to the country of your study. In Kenya, reports by this organization that have recorded these values and all this, and then you can talk about now, go down now to the specific area where you are going to do your research and say, in Sierra County, even if you can even go down to the village if you want, but then look at the information that is there. So it's easier for me to follow your story from global to local. Okay, there's something in research, well, not in research, but I think in my circles, we always talk about globalization. So you think locally, you think globally, but you act locally. So we don't want you to be writing your background, just focusing on that specific county alone. We don't want it to appear like you don't have an idea of what is happening outside where your study is happening. Okay. Secondly, you need to provide a brief but appropriate historical backdrop. Okay. Thirdly, provide that the contemporary context in which your proposed research question occupies the central stage. In short, try to paint your research question in broad brushes and at the same time bring out its significance. Okay, so there is always what we call the bold claim or your central question or your thesis statement where you are making a bold claim. This bold claim must be qualified. Okay, so the introduction generally covers the following elements. So state the research problem, which is often referred to as the purpose of the study. Provide the context and set the stage for your research question in such a way as to show its necessity and importance. Present the rationale of your proposed study. Briefly describe the major issues and sub-problems to be addressed by your research. Identify the key independent and dependent variables for your experiment. State your hypothesis. And sometimes in the background, of course, there are different ways of writing this, but I think what I've given you generally gives an idea. The other thing is the statement of the problem. I'm not going to talk about this. I will talk about it, but not into too much detail. I think we have talked a lot about the statement of the problem. Okay, it's a clear statement of the problems of the problem that answers the question: why does this research need to be conducted? So, of course, this question can also be answered by the justification of the significance of the study. But then, in the statement of the problem, I always tell people, don't mix the justification in your statement of the problem. I have seen quite a number of researchers stating the problem at the end of the day. They say, it is for this reason, it is important, or for this reason, the study will conduct what, or the study will collect data. No. In the statement of the problem section, just state the problem and stop it there. What is the problem? State the problem, okay? that is a statement of the problem. So in that section, you are supposed to state the problem as is. You are going to justify why it is important to conduct research later on. But for now, I just want you to state the problem. Tell us what the problem is. And I told you the problem can be identified through reading, but also the problem has to be two parts. The first part of the problem is the actual problem in the society or the actual problem in the industry that you are trying to solve. The second part of your statement of the problem is the gap in knowledge. So the knowledge gap you also need. So even after stating to us that there is the decline in, you remember when I was talking about the problem tree. So you can use, of course, you can utilize the problem tree because then it makes it easier for you to organize your thoughts. But even as you try to state these things, make sure you state the problem in the industry. So you'd say, as an example, I'm giving an example about the high cost of fish feeds in aquaculture. So farmers spend a lot of money buying fish feeds, and then this now ends up reducing the margins. So the profits are
Ok, comme ça, vous profitez, oui, vous continuez à profiter, oui.
So when you are trying to solve the problem of the high cost of fish feeds, then so that is the problem, high cost of feeds in aquaculture. So as I say, you need to think about what is causing these high cost of feeds, and what is the problem that result from, what are the consequences of this high cost of feeds. So, and as I said, what is it that is known and what is that is still not known? Because then that now justifies the research. Now, there's another thing that I tell researchers. When you are writing the statement of the problem, when you get to the research gap, try to write it in a way that resonates with your objectives, the objectives of your study. Because then, when I'm now reading your statement of the problem and I go back to read your objectives, I will see, okay, now I am seeing why these are the specific objectives. Because these specific objectives have been highlighted somehow, maybe not very explicitly, but then there could be a subtle way of talking about them in your statement of the problem as gaps. So that when I go and see objectives, I will see, okay, now I see where these objectives are coming from. Because they were already talked about as gaps. So let's say one of the things you are going to look at, or one of your objectives, is to look at the growth performance of Nile tilapia in aquaponic system, in an NFT aquaponic system, as an example. So in your statement of the problem, you need to make it clear that it's not really clear how these fish perform under NFT aquaponic system when paired with these specific vegetables. So research has been done, but most of the research that you have seen have focused on this fish while paired with another vegetable, other forms of plants. But you are looking at African indigenous vegetables, and there is quite not much that is known about the performance of this fish while paired with indigenous vegetables. You see, that is the statement of the problem, the other side. That is what you are stating in the statement of the problem. But then when I come to your objective, I now see, okay, that's the reason why this person is now trying to look at the growth performance of this fish while paired with these vegetables. You understand? So it's now easier for me now to understand why you are focusing on those specific objectives, because it has been hinted in the problem, in the statement of the problem. But if you don't hint it in the statement of the problem as a gap, then I will ask, you have not stated this as a problem. Why are you studying it? Why is it appearing as your objective? Because then what is it contributing? So be smart when writing your statement of the problem. Try to lace it, not explicitly that somebody reads your objectives directly in your statement of the problem. Be smart about it, but try to put it there so that it's clear. Even in your background, try to put these gaps, try to bring them out, here and there, so that somebody can easily identify why the objectives are. So it contains several paragraphs of explanation. Most of the time, you just write it in one paragraph, because if your statement of the problem can go beyond a page, then you don't know what you are studying. You are not clear on actually what the statement of the problem is. It does not have to be too long, because if it is too long, it gives an impression of you trying to write around, trying to write the problem that is not there. Okay, in it, you are looking for something wrong, something that needs close attention, or something where existing methods no longer seem to be working. So, as I said, here you are just going to state the problem. You are not going to justify why the study is important. Just state the problem. Tell us the problem. What is the main problem? What is causing this problem? And what are the other problems associated with this problem? Okay? Don't forget, the problem has to be in two parts. The actual problem in the industry or society, and the knowledge gap. And the knowledge gap must be laced. In your statement of the problem, lace it with aspects of your objective. Not directly, be subtle about it, but lace it with it so that when somebody reads, they say, okay, yeah, I saw they talked about this as a gap. They saw they talked about this as not still very clear. I saw they say the data on this is still not available. So try to lace your statement of the problem with aspects of your objectives so that somebody will understand why those objectives are the way they are. Okay? I think this one we are not going to talk about. Objectives. Now, the objectives are, of course, we draw them from the gaps because that is what really drives the objectives. You have a general objective, and most of the time, the general objective reads almost as the title. Sometimes it's not really too different from the title. But the specific objectives now are going to be informed by the specific data sets you want to collect or the specific gaps you need to fill. Okay, so an objective is a clear, concise, declarative statement which provides direction to investigate the variables. The objectives, if it is clear enough, it will even give you a direction and an idea on the kind of data sets you need to collect to answer the questions that you are asking yourselves. I think we know what objectives are. So basically, they just guide you on the data sets you need to collect. Now, there is what we call hypothesis or research questions. Maybe if we can ask, when do we use hypothesis and when do we use research questions? Anybody here? I will stop sharing for 1 minute so that anybody who wants to give the idea, when do we use research questions and when do we use research hypothesis? Hello? Anybody wants to give their take? When do we use hypothesis and when do we use research questions? I'm seeing Emmanuel Okalang. I know somebody by the name Emmanuel Okalang. I'm seeing a name that is familiar. Anyway.
Doc, I would like to speak.
Yes, please.
I think that we use hypothesis when we have a statistical test to run. So, for instance, when you are going to do some test on model or run a statistical analysis, then that will inform you to bring in a hypothesis because you are able to test it via maybe statistical procedures. But with the research questions, maybe it's more of when you are dealing with qualitative information. So you can bring in a research question.
Nicholas, you're muted if you're speaking.
Oh, thank you. So let's say we are comparing two things, or we are comparing the influence of one thing on another. Do we use a research question or research objective or research hypothesis?
Yeah, so when we are comparing between two things like that, that means you can test it. So I think we have to bring in a hypothesis there when you are comparing two things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, or when you are looking at the influence of something on another, then, or the impact of something on another, or the relationship between one thing and another, then you can use hypothesis where you assume that there is no significant difference or significant effect, or there's no significant influence of this on the other, or there's no significant relationship between this and that. But then there are cases where you're not comparing anything, you're just determining, or you're just assessing what is there. Then it means that you are just going to ask your questions. To what extent, or what is the perception, or what is the perception of these people on this? What is the I want to really be cautious when we want to say that we only use hypothesis when we are dealing with quantitative data, and we use research questions when dealing with qualitative data. I want to be a bit cautious on that. There are cases where we are collecting quantitative data, but we still use research questions because we are not comparing anything. We are not looking at the influence of something on the other. Let's say I am just looking at the efficiency of something on let's say I'm growing a crop, and I'm not comparing two crop systems, two different plants. Like for my study, I wanted to look at, let's say when I'm looking at growth and I'm doing spinach, I'm doing lettuce, and I'm doing basil, as an example. It's difficult for me to compare the growth rates of these two because of these three crops, because they have different growth forms. So you can't say that this one is longer than this, or this one is taller than this, because basically they are different crops anyway. So when you are not comparing different things, you're just determining something, then in most cases you just ask yourself, what is the level of efficiency, for example, but when you're comparing or determining relationships, then most of the time you use hypothesis. But then I think the bottom line is that it's not only when we are dealing with qualitative. Sometimes you could be doing qualitative, but even qualitative data can still be analyzed in a way that we can still test whether there is a difference in perception between this, or the level of acceptance of some technology. For example, we can collect and say maybe 75% of these people have, or there is more people who have are for this technology compared to this. It's not really about qualitative or quantitative. It's about whether you are comparing or determining, or whether you are going to test relationships. That is when you are going to use hypothesis. When you're not testing relationships, or when you're not comparing, then it's difficult for you to use hypothesis, because in that case, then what is the hypothesis? But let's see what is here. So hypotheses are testable explanations proposed before conducting a project, and they both seek to predict relationships. To use the hypothesis or questions depend on the purpose of the study, the approach and design of the methodology. So whether you are going to use research question or research hypothesis, it will depend on the purpose of the study, the approach and design of the methodology. A research question is used to analyze and investigate a topic. It is written as a question and is inquisitive in nature. So we have what we call causal questions that compare two or more phenomena and determine if a relationship exists. Example is, does the amount of calcium in the diet of elementary school children affect the number of cavities they have per year? Descriptive questions, however, seek to describe a phenomena and often study how much, or how often, or what is the change. How often do college-age students use Twitter? Then there's comparative questions that aims to examine the difference between two or more groups in relation to one or more variables. What is the difference in caloric intake of high school girls and boys? But then this one now, because it's comparative, we can easily examine whether there's any significant difference between the intake in caloric intake between girls and boys. So it means that there are cases where even comparing, you can still decide to use a question, or you can use hypothesis. But then an hypothesis on the other hand is predictive in nature, and is used when significant knowledge already exists on the subject, which allows the prediction to be made. It is always written as a statement. Consuming vitamin C supplements will reduce the or will significantly or will have an insignificant reduction in the incidence of common cold in teenagers. So that when you analyze your data, and in most cases, which hypothesis do we use in research? We have two types. Which one do we use in research most of the time?
We use the null hypothesis.
So null hypothesis assumes that there is no significant difference, or there is no significant impact, or there is no significant relationship. While do we call it alternate or alternative hypothesis? How do we call it? So why do we use null hypothesis?
Hypothesis.
Hello? Why do we use null hypothesis? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Okay, according to my own understanding, null hypothesis is usually used so that whenever there is no significant difference in the parameter of interest that you are measuring in, that will cater for it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oyaro Osoro says to reject or fail to reject. So that when you do your study, when you do your research, you reject or you fail to reject. Does fail to reject mean accept? Anyway, if you're going to use alternative hypothesis, then it means that you already know that there will be an impact or there will be a relationship. So you assume that there is no relationship, and that's what your research is trying to find out. And then you will say, okay, indeed, my research and my analysis have demonstrated or have confirmed that there's no relationship or that there is relationship. So that is where you will either accept, will either reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. Because when you use an hypothesis assuming that there is an influence or there's a relationship, then it means that when you finally want to do your research, you are going to the field with already you already go to the field knowing that there will. So then it means that there's an assumption that it can even it can influence your data collection, because then you want to fit it within a specific narrative. Okay. Then there's what we call significance of the proposed study. Now, what is the difference between significance of study and justification? There are universities that will tell you to write the significance of study. There are those that will tell you to write justification, but there are those that will tell you to write both. What is the difference between justification of study and significance of study? Anybody?
Well, to me, justification is just trying to explain why they study. And significance looks at the contribution of the study to theory and other practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other person? Justification is, why is the study important? Why do I need to do this study? Significance is, what will be the contribution of this study to the industry, to the policy, to the researchers, to theory, and all these other things. Any other person that also wants to give their contribution? What is the difference between justification of study and significance of study?
Hello.
Yes.
Maybe to make my contribution.
Yes.
Justification is usually try to explain the rationale of the research and show how will it generate new knowledge and benefits. Whereas the significance, try now to justify why this is important and explain why the research will be of benefit. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Agnes.
Okay, thank you. I think according to me, justification of the study is that you want to prove why it is important to carry out that study. You want to prove, it's just a matter of proving the study. And then the significance of the study is that you want to tell us why it is important to carry out that study. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone is right. Everyone is right. Sometimes it's difficult for people to understand where the difference is between justification of study and significance of the study. It's not so different, but if your university tells you to write them in two different sections, because there are universities that will tell you need to write the justification and follow it up by writing the significance of the study, then somebody will tell me, but Nicholas, I thought justification and significance are the same thing. They are not similar. They could be similar, but not identical. I don't know how to say that. They are not really exactly the same. Justification is focusing on the output of your study. Okay? It's basically the data. I'm collecting data. It is justified for me to do this research because the data I'm going to collect is going to solve the problems that we are going to talk about. So you have narrated certain problems. So you are going to justify how the data you are going to collect, which is the output of your research, is going to help solve those problems. Significance, on the other hand, is talking about the outcome of your research. That is the main difference. So the justification talks about the output of your research. So it describes the data and why that data is important towards solving the problem you have narrated. But the significance on the other side is about the outcome of your result. What will your research influence? How will your research be utilized, for example? So that is the difference. So when you are talking about how it will influence policy on food security, or how it will be used by other researchers in developing their research, for example, how then it can also contribute to theory, how all this, that could be a significance. What will be the outcome of your research? How then can the results of your research be utilized in ways that can make things better? But justification, on the other hand, is talking about the output of your research, the data you are going to collect, the data sets of the data specifically you are collecting. How then can it contribute to solving the problems that you have talked about? I think there is no need of now talking about this slide because I've talked about it already. Now, most of the time, when you are writing your justification, if you are told to write justification and significance in different parts, try to also link your significance or the justification to what is relevant to your country or the country where you are doing the study. So let's say, like in Kenya, we have Vision 2030, we have the bottom-up agenda, we have like the Vision 2030 bottom-up agenda, food security, whatever. Just try to find a way of trying to make it to bring it home, so that whoever is reading your justification or your significance of the study will also understand how real it is. Because sometimes you talk about people sometimes write very general justifications, or they write very general significance of study by saying it will contribute, it will influence policy on. Try to link this study how does it link to Vision 2030? How does it link to the food security agenda in the country, for example? How does it link to the county government CIDP? Most counties, I'm just using Kenya as an example. Most counties in Kenya have what we call County Integrated Development Plan, CIDPs. So try as much as possible to make us understand how then does it relate to both national. You can even start at international level. Specific areas that it, like FGDs, how does it link to the FDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, talking about now your specific country. Even if the regional body, let's say if you have a regional body that has a specific policy that they are trying to find, the agenda, try to link it to both national and international agenda so that it's clear how then your study is going to generate impact, because then otherwise it will not be significant, okay? So we have the justification, significance of study, and so many other things. And before I forget, there's always something in most research these days, we have what we call operational definition of terms. What does that mean? Or what do you put in that section? Operational definition of terms.
Well, basically,
yes.
Well, to me, basically, operational definition of term look at the key subjects in your objectives, which I think might be maybe need clarification for the people reading your work. So in each objective, there are key terms and also or related terms that you will review also in the literature. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other person? Operational definition.
Hello?
Yes?
Yes, Doc. My network was breaking, so I didn't hear what you said about the significance of the study. I'm usually confused about it and the justification. But my network was breaking, so I didn't hear.
Okay. I will just go over it for 1 minute and then we move on. The justification talks about the output of your research. There's some data sets you are going to collect. So when you are justifying your research, you need to tell us how will the data sets you are collecting solve the problems that you cited. So that is the justification. You need to say, it is justified for me to collect this data, or it is justified for me to conduct this research because the data sets I'm going to collect on A, B, C, D is going to help solve problems A, B, C, D this way. That is the justification. The significance, however, is talking about the outcome of your research. So after doing your research, how will it influence policy, for example? How will it influence future research? How can it influence policy, and what specific policies can it influence? How does your study now link to the agenda of your country, for example, if it's about food policy, food security, if there's an agenda, the government has an agenda, for example, on Vision 2030, like the Kenyan Vision 2030, how then can the research of your work influence all that and help towards the realization of those agendas? So the most important difference is justification talks about the output, which is the data sets you are collecting and how then it can be used to solve the problems, while significance of the study talks about the outcome. After I've collected this data, how can it influence other things within the industry, and how can it be utilized? Now, we have talked about operational definition of terms. You see, there is a term, let's say food security, as an example, or there's a term like diarrhea, as an example. Maybe I want, I think as already has been stated, we want when the readers read your work, they know how you used these terms in the context of your proposal. Maybe they mean something else when I read them on a different proposal. So I can read them in a different proposal and then they will mean something different. So when you're talking about aquaculture in your document, I want to know what you mean by aquaculture in your document. Okay, when you're talking about cage aquaculture, as an example, there's a cage that you put in the lake, and there are cages that are put in oceans, and there are cages that are put in ponds, for example, and in dams. So I want you, when I'm reading your proposal, I want to know when you are talking about cage aquaculture, I know what cage aquaculture means in the context of your proposal. Those words could mean something else when I meet them elsewhere. So if I meet them in other contexts or in other subjects, it could mean something different from what it means in your current proposal. So you need to tell me that anytime you see this word in this specific proposal, no, this is what it means. Or if in any time you meet this phrase or anytime you meet this concept, know that this is what it means in the context of my research. Okay? Now, this is what we call literature review. Literature review basically is just reading literature. And so what many people don't know is sometimes you read the literature review section of a student and you realize they have just summarized what other people have done. They have not critiqued, they have not given their voice, and they have not even tied it to their research. So when you are doing literature review, you are not just summarizing what other people have done out there. You are going to look at what they have put out there, compare the different and contrasting views about whatever your review is about, and give also your opinion in some cases, and try to also
pick out the gap. So I always tell people in your literature review, I always want to see you, if there is any gap that still exists that is relevant to your research, bring it out in the literature review so that I see why you are doing literature and what you identified. So you can easily say when you are, because the literature review is also informed by your specific objectives. So you have literature review, it is informed by specific objectives. So you have specific objective one. So when you are reviewing literature, you're not just going to review literature without a guidance. So what guides you mostly is your objectives. So you are going to review literature based on the objectives of your study. But when you are reviewing literature, I don't want you just to be summarizing what other people have done. You need to critique and say where there are agreements and where there is still a gap that is still not well understood. And then you now bring in your study and say, it is for this reason that the current study is focusing on A, B, C, D, because then, so that you can now show us the gap and tell us how the current study is going to address that gap. That is the only way you are going to tie down your literature review to your research. If your literature review does not link back to your research, it does not link back to your objectives, then it's difficult for me to understand why you are even doing that literature review, okay? So in your literature review, identify the gaps. Even just summarize and tell us what that people have done, critique, tell us where the gaps are, and tell us how then your research is now coming in to fill in those gaps, okay? Okay, so what questions are still unanswered? It will assist you in further narrowing the problem for investigation. You must show that you have looked through the literature and have found the latest updates in your field of study. It helps you to be sure that your investigation is not just reinventing the wheel, okay? Tomorrow we will talk about literature search and retrieval. So where do you look? Where do you get literature from? How do you retrieve them? Once you retrieve them, how do you summarize them and cite? Those ones we'll talk about tomorrow. But just I wanted to make you understand that literature review is not just about summarizing literature. It's about critiquing and also sometimes giving your own ideas about this and showing us the gaps and also narrating to us how then it's linked to your current research. Okay. So literature review serves several important functions, ensures that you are not reinventing the wheel, gives credit to those who have laid the groundwork for your research. Of course, this is where you are going to cite people who have done things before you, demonstrates your knowledge of the research problem, demonstrates your understanding of the theoretical and research issues related to your research question, shows your ability to critically evaluate relevant literature information, indicates your ability to integrate and synthesize the existing literature, and provides new theoretical insights or develops a new model as the conceptual framework for your research. Now, in research and in some studies, in most studies these days, you have what we call the conceptual framework, but also there's the theoretical framework. Now, literature review has to be in two parts, and especially depending on your field. In our natural sciences or other sciences, we just do what we call empirical literature review. But mostly you find in social sciences or in other sciences, sometimes you realize you do what we call theoretical literature review, and then there's empirical literature review. Theoretical literature review is where you are going to review theories that are relevant to your field and then picking one or two and telling us, hey, I have reviewed 5 theories that are really closely related to my work. And based on that, I have picked these 2 theories that are going to anchor my work. So my work is going to be anchored on these 2 theories because of reason A, B, C, D. But that does not mean that those are the only theories that I know that are relevant to my field or my specific area of interest. I have reviewed theories on this theory, this theory, this theory, and then you give us the reason why you have chosen a specific theory. Okay? But then that is now theoretical literature review. Then we have what we call the empirical literature review, where you are going to review literature on other works that have been done by other people, empirical data that have been published out there, and then you critique, summarize, and then cite and tell us what other people have also done, and then giving us an idea of why or how your research is going to fill those gaps. So this is important because then it demonstrates that you have looked at what other people have done. So there's the theoretical literature review that is going to help you come up with the theoretical framework, but then you have the empirical literature review that is going to help you come up with your conceptual framework. Now, the conceptual framework basically is just how all these your variables are linked to each other. I will see if I can have an example here, but then there's no one standard way of doing it. All these things are linked to all this, but then let me see if I have an example. But then the conceptual framework just shows the relationship, how the dependent and independent variables are, and if they are intervening or other variables in between, how then do they influence the interaction? Because then I want to see that these are the independent variables, or these are the treatments, and then this is the outcome. So I want to see these are the independent variables, and these are dependent variables. And are there any other intervening or mediating variables in between, or control variables in between that influence this relationship? You find that sometimes the relationship is not linear. It could even be cyclic. So you find that for an event to occur, or for an independent variable to influence a dependent variable, there has to be some things in between. Let me give you an example. I am feeding fish on a specific diet or two different diets. So these are my independent variables because they are the diets. I'm feeding fish. Now, the dependent variable, for example, could be the fish yield, the growth rate. That is the dependent variable because they depend on the diet I'm providing. But before it influences the growth of fish, there has to be water quality in between and other management practices. So it means that whatever I'm observing on the other end has been influenced by something in between, which might not even be my variable of interest. But then they are influencing the relationship between these two, between the dependent and independent variable. So it means that I have to consider them, even though. Yes, Henry.
Yeah, just complete. I want to ask a question, clarification, but just complete what you're saying. Thank you.
Okay. So sometimes you find that the relationship between the dependent and independent variable is not straight. There are other variables in between. They might not be variables of your interest, but then they influence the relationship. So when you are doing the conceptual framework, you need to tell us that, hey, this one is linked to this. This is how this ends up influencing the dependent variable. Yes, Henry, ask the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. On the issue of this theoretical and conceptual, there is confusion about the use of diagram. Which one should have a diagram? Some people say it's the conceptual. Some do have a diagram for theoretical framework. So basically, I just need a clarification because others, from other scholars, they say diagram is just for conceptual framework and not for theory should be stated. Thank you.
Anybody who wants to give an answer to this before I give my opinion? Anybody? As I say, yes, please.
Okay, I'm Eric Kiprono. For my thesis, I was looking at political economy analysis for sanitation delivery. So the theoretical framework that I was using was frameworks that deals with political economy. That's National Development for Economic from UK. So it has no diagram for that case. But for my conceptual framework, I had a framework for my dependent variable, understanding the role of actors, the technology, and there were other intervening. The intervening variable at the end, that's political will, now affecting now the outcome. That is a sanitation delivery. So for my case, the conceptual framework is now that has a diagram whereby you are showing the relationship between the dependent variable, the intervening variable, and the outcome variable. Yeah. Though sometimes you can find that some theoretical frameworks have diagrams that you are conceptualizing now your idea or your study. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiprono, for that. And it's a good thing you've given us even an example of what you had. Yes, Kudus.
Yes, thank you. I think Kiprono just spoke to what I was going to speak, which is conceptual framework can easily be presented with illustrations and diagrams showing how the variables in the study interact together. So, but theoretical framework can just be stated as a statement. So I align with what Kiprono mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other person? We said here we give our ideas, and because this is we all have different experiences, and that's why we are all here to learn. We can't say that one person can know it all, and that's why we just say, okay, this is what I think. Because for researchers, people will always be having ideas around different things. Now, I have interacted with a lot of proposals. I've interacted with quite a number of theses. I've also read a little bit of papers here and there. what I have seen in most cases is the theoretical framework is mostly just stated. I think I have seen one case where there was a theoretical framework that had a diagram. I didn't pay too much attention to it. I think I can also just go back and check. I think these are also things that we also get challenged, and we go back and check. Are there instances where theoretical frameworks are presented in form of diagrams? I have seen in most cases, theoretical frameworks are just stated. So in your theoretical literature review, you are going to review theories and explain to us why did you pick a specific theory out of the 5 or the 6 that you reviewed and critiqued very well and gave their weaknesses and strengths. And then the conceptual framework, I have seen almost all the time, like 99% of the time, where I have seen people doing conceptual frameworks, they have drawn diagrams. And then they do a little bit of description of how then that conceptual framework works. So it's just a relationship between it's just a relationship between or among the variables and how they interact. So the bottom line is I'm just saying what I have seen. I'm not saying how one way of doing it, but I have seen in most cases theoretical frameworks, you just narrate the theories and state them and just state it. The theories are stated, and then you choose and give reasons why you have chosen a specific theory. But conceptual framework, most of the time, is done using diagrams, okay, showing relationships. I think we will talk about literature review more tomorrow when we'll be looking at where do I get literature from, how do I read them, how do I cite them. Those are things we can look at tomorrow. But the most important thing is that literature review will give you an idea of what. Then the last part is how you intend to do your work. So the last part is methodology or approach, okay? So basically, it's difficult for me to come and give the specific way of doing research because then people come from different fields. So there are those who are doing experimental research. There are those who are doing, maybe research that now entails interviews. Some are doing longitudinal. Some are doing, how do you call them? Longitudinal, and there's this snapshot. Okay. Some are doing longitudinal studies, some are using questionnaires, some are using all those things. So it's difficult to say that there's one way of doing research. But what I want to state here is just the methodology. The methodology part just shows or the approach that you are giving. How are you going to collect your data? How are you going to approach your study, basically, to answer the research questions that you have? So it outlines the strategy for conducting the research to answer a question or realize your objective. Now, your methodology is mostly, your methodology has to be informed by your objectives, because then it will determine the data sets you are going to collect, the kind of data you are going to collect, and even the amount of data you are going to collect. So it influences your methodology. Plan the procedures that will be used in the investigation, review different approaches, designs, and methods for investigating your area of research, specify tools required to meet your research goals. So the methodology has several things to it. So let's say if you are going to do an experiment, you need to talk about the experimental design. If you are going to do sampling, for example, in the lake, you need to talk about the sampling protocol. How are you going to do the sampling? Is it going to be randomized, completely randomized, or block run? All those things. So you need to talk about the research design, for example. If you are going out there to do a study like that that is going to deal with maybe you are going to do a questionnaire, for example, you are going to do interviews, you are going to do key informant interviews or focus group discussions. How exactly are you going to do it? Where will you do it? And you need to justify why you chose that location. So I'm going to do this in Sierra County or in a specific village in Sierra County. Why that specific village in Sierra County? I'm going to do this among a specific section of the population. Justify why did you select that specific section of the population. So let's say I'm going to do it among the youth. Why did I select the youth and not the elderly people? I'm going to do it with those who are alcohol users. Why did I choose alcohol users and not non-alcohol users? I'm going to sample people. I'm going to deal. Then also the sample size, for example, you also need to tell us how are you going to settle on the sample size. I know the total population of the people I'm looking at it is 70,000. How then do I settle on the number that I'm going to sample? There's a formula that you can use, for example, based on your field. There's a formula you can use to determine your sample size. We're going to talk about the limitations and the scope. What am I looking at and what am I not going to look at? so that it's clear for somebody. They will not ask you, why did you not collect data on this? Or why did you not collect data in Embu County, for example? And why did you only collect in Siaya? It's clear in your methodology that I've chosen my study is going to focus on this specific area, this specific section of the population. This is the number that I'm going to do. These are the questionnaires, or these are the research tools that I'm going to use. This is how I'm going to handle my data. This is how I'm going to analyze my data using these methodologies and using these tools. So it's just specifying exactly how the research is going to be conducted. So basically, I'm not going to talk about too much because then different fields have different methodologies. Then the time frame basically is your is what we call your research. The time frame is your research work plan, basically. So it could be back plan. So you want to do something. How long will it take? Experienced researchers tend to underestimate, inexperienced researchers tend to underestimate the amount of time for each activity. Check with a more experienced researcher. Sometimes you're writing a proposal and then you say, from month 1 to month 2, I will do this. Month this to month this, I will do this. And then you get disappointed. So when you're planning, and some people use Gantt charts just to show, just drawing and shading, and just how then this will be done. So you need to try and also talk to those who are a bit more experienced. Now, what questions do you need to consider when setting up your schedule? When will your study start and finish? Are there particular stages like piloting, screening? Why is it important for us to do piloting, like a pilot study? That goes back to the methodology, but I want to ask about it here because I've seen it as just reminded me of something. Let's say you are going to do a questionnaire, or you are going to do a research in the field, you are going to the lake, or you are going somewhere. Why is it possible? Why is it important for you to do like a pilot study? Why is it important, and what is it? Yes, Agnes.
Yeah, basically, to me, it's you're pre-testing. Sometimes for the questionnaire, I call it pre-testing of your work. Sometimes you plan, but its plan is not in reality. Let's say in terms of time frame or correction, or some of the questions you might not be able to analyze them in the way. So when you pre-test, you're able to know maybe the time spent in answering a particular question. So you readjust your question or your plan, or how you collect certain data, which it can be easily be analyzed. So it helps you to make some correction to what is there, so that it will help you to have because you have a time frame. Sometimes if you don't pilot it, you might spend a whole lot of time without completing what you're doing. So it's just a test case of what is on the ground and how best you can easily do your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I think you've clearly, Agnes, I wanted you to say something as well. Even if it's just what David has said, there's no problem. Yeah, just say whatever it is.
Yeah, I think he's explained so well. It's meant to adjust the questionnaire and the database.
Thank you. I think this is something that some of us, and even in the field of, even in our field, when I was doing my research on aquaponics, I had to plant fish. I had to stock the fish in my system and allow the system to run, then put vegetables, and I was just collecting data. The first instance, I was just collecting data without not really just doing the experiment the way it was supposed to be done. But then I only ran it for 1 month just to see how does the system work. Is it possible for me to adjust the water flow rate? How does the fish react? How are the crops at the end of the line? Are they different in terms of growth from the ones at the beginning? So that you are sure that your system is running, is working well. You go to Lake Victoria, let me give you an example, because then most of the time people think pre-test or piloting is only in the field of social sciences, where you are going to use questionnaires. You want to do a study. I was doing my study on a specific lake in Victoria for in Kenya, my master's. I did a study on the feeding behavior of a certain fish in Lake Naivasha. So you want to go to the lake, and just the first day or maybe 2 days, just going there to do fishing, trying to catch fish and see, am I even able to catch this fish? You've written a very good example, a very good proposal, but then you might go to the lake and end up not catching anything. So this pre-testing is important, so that are things in Kenya would say things on the ground are different. There's a way in Kiswahili it sounds funny, but then you might plan things on the table, or you might plan things in the office, and then when you go to the ground, you realize, hey, it's not what I planned. You were thinking of interviewing certain kind of people, then you go to the ground and realize these people are not there, or they're not willing to answer your question. So is it possible for me to go back and re-strategize, change my target population, for example, maybe play around with my questions just so that they can address the specific objectives? And also, what do you do with the data of your pretest?
Can I answer?
Yes, Kiprono.
Essentially, what I do with piloting, mine was questionnaire.
Yeah.
So you find that essentially there are some constructs or some things that were not coming out well. So essentially, you have to carry out, do we call the reliability analysis to see if whatever you had intended to collect is measured well, or internal consistency of your questionnaire, the parameter of interest that you're measuring is usually, is it 6, is it 7, is it 9? So the reliability test for this questionnaire is giving you whatever you intended to measure. So that's essentially that. Yeah.
You don't want to go to the field and you have already deployed 75 people, you paid them for 1 week. Then they come back with the data, and this is data you cannot use. Or this is data that is not answering your research questions completely. You have spent resources, you've spent time, you are just going to be stressed for no reason. So before you go full blown, and I also want to ask, what percentage do you use in your, let's say you are going to do questionnaires, you're going to, what should be the extent of your pretest? Anybody? I'm going to interview 1,000 people. I'm going to run 1,000 questionnaires. How big should my pretest be? Or how big should my pilot study be? Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
For mine, I think I used a quarter. For my sample size was 100, so I piloted 20 respondents with different the demographics, the specific research questions, and see the relationship or the internal consistency of the questionnaire. So I used 20, a quarter of the respondent.
Okay. Any other person with a different opinion? Because it's true, we want to see how reliable is this tool. I don't want to go to the field with a tool that will come back with data that I cannot use, or data that is difficult to understand even for myself. And it would be 10%. Yes, this is what I also thought. I think if you did a quarter, that was 25%. That was quite high, but also I think also your sample size was also not very big. Mostly, I have seen people talk about 10%. The other thing is, I always tell people, once you come back with the results of your data, apart from just the internal consistency and also reliability test, do just an entire analysis the way you could have done just analyze and see how the data speaks, okay? So that you have an idea, okay, this question number 17, I don't think it's giving me. So you can find out what if we adjust this question to read this way? Do you think we can? Or even the people who are in the field, you can easily ask them, how did you ask this question? So you could find that different people who are administering this are either asking this question differently, and now they are getting slightly different answers. Or, it helps you adjust a lot of things. So don't assume the pretest part of your research. Then there's budget. I'm not going to talk about this. I think we are all conversant with the budget. It's just how much of the resources that you need, and you need to, these days, this is what we call a budget proposal, where you are not just going to list things. You are going to justify why do you need an off-road vehicle? Why do you need an electronic microscope instead of just a normal microscope? Why do so? It's just a list of what you need, and no one wants to give their money to be wasted or to be diverted to other uses. So make sure that you write a budget that is realistic, that can also be justified. Then at the end of it, we have a list of references, and this is where you are going to list everything that you have put in your everything that is in your document has to be listed in the reference list. Then why do proposals get rejected? I think we talked about what the reader is looking for, the nature of the problem. If there is failure to establish general significance of your work, your proposal will be rejected. If the research plan is vague and not presented in detail, if there is no or lacking tangible hypothesis or too many hypotheses, denotes lack of focus. If it is too ambitious and realistically much is promised, for example, so you want to look at the impacts of a certain thing in the entire world, maybe it's difficult. Procedural irregularities, like some parts are missing, or if you missed certain deadlines or incorrect budget, for example. Now, I will stop here so that we have a 10 minutes break, and then we come back for a plenary. Just keep the questions and the discussions and other comments so that we just rise from our chairs, just grab a cup of tea or a glass of water, and then we come back at in 13 minutes, not 13 minutes, in 10 minutes time. So 11:27, we'll be back by 11:27. Kevina, back to you.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. So in the meantime, you can kindly fill in the attendance form that I have put in the chat. I'm also going to reshare it for those who were not able to see it.
Yes, my brother, how are you?
I'm okay, James.
I think the language is used based on the level of understanding. If I'm doing masters, mostly we say I've used this, right? But if you're a PhD student, we talk piloting, right? So I think they all mean the same thing just because of the language used or the level of understanding used. But for me, I think it's the same. It means the same.
Okay, thank you. Kudus?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. For piloting, you are going through the process of testing the whole of the proposal from beginning to taking all the aspects of the stuff. But for pre-testing, you're just assessing the or validating your tools of measurement, be it the questionnaire or whatever tools you are using, you are putting it to test to see if it's going to validly get the information you require. So piloting is more extensive. It involves the whole aspect of research work. To the extent of giving a report on what the pilot did. And they are using different for different purposes.
For some reason, I don't know if anybody can hear Lawal clearly. Maybe I'm the one who has a bit of interference.
No,
I
it's
can't.
the same here. I didn't
So
hear.
sorry, I was
hear.
using an earpiece. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it's better now.
Hello?
Yes, it's now
Am
better.
I clearer now?
Yes, it's clearer now.
I was saying that piloting essentially involves all aspects of the research, going through all the OOG to the extent of reporting what your finding is. And one of the advantages of doing piloting is, for example, trying to know what the appropriate sample size will be when there are no previous prevalence. But for pre-testing, essentially it's looking at the tools, the instrument with which you are making measurements, trying to validate it for the purpose for which you are using it. So pre-testing focus on the tool, while piloting looks around the whole aspect of the research work. Both of them are actually helping to improve the final research work itself. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Kudus. I think the last this second time it was clear that pre-testing is where we are calibrating the tools, but then piloting is where we are going through the entire aspect of the research to the extent of analyzing the results and then seeing how then it will work out when we finally now go out to collect data. Yes, Kevin.
Yes, Doc, good morning.
Morning.
Then it means pre-test can be a component of piloting. Because if you say pre-test is maybe a component of the work you are doing, you want to pre-test and maybe see whether or how it will work, then piloting is the whole component of whatever you are doing, then means pre-test can be a component of piloting.
Lawal, do you want to say something about that? Yes, Dr. Franklin. Hello? Franklin.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much. I don't know if you can hear me. I had some the internet problems.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi. Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I think that with respect to the question of our brother, Pre-testing, like one of our brothers already explained, is generally limited to the tool. So it must not necessarily be followed. It's not necessarily said it's a component of a pilot study, because not all the studies that we conduct are pilot studies. But now, pre-testing, like I want to collect data on a particular, let's just say a cross-sectional study. I develop a tool which I want to use. I probably want to pre-test that tool in a similar population to see if that tool can be is reliable and can be validated, to see if there are any errors, so that I correct before the start of the data collection period in the proper. But now, pilot study, why a pre-test can actually be a component of any research proposal, be it a pilot study or not. But the pilot study, not every proposal or study should be a pilot study. Like our brother said, the pilot study, we want to, first of all, have a clue about what we are investigating, and we are supposed to implement all the proposal. It is from the results of this pilot study that researchers can now decide if it is worth it to actually now conduct and implement the proposal proper and in a larger scale. And in some cases, after the result of a pilot study, some researchers use those results when they deem it good and necessary to obtain funding now to actually implement the real research proposal in a larger scale. So I don't know if it helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Franklin, for that. Yeah, I think it's some interesting conversation. I'm also getting to understand some aspects of this. Yes, I will give a chance to David. Henry.
Yeah, thank you very much. With regards, I just wanted to bring some few areas with regards to research methodology.
Yes, David.
Basically, it's within not there's you don't have iteration. Let's say you do it within a particular point case, but for the longitudinal, let's say most of the seasonal researches are maybe longitudinal.
Sorry, David, we keep losing you. I don't know whether it's the network or, but we keep losing you.
Sorry, please, I have an internet cut. So the longitudinal, basically, you collect a particular sample, particular. After some time, you go again and do a repeated reading. Let's series those trend. Most of the trend studies can maybe be related to that of longitudinal. And also, what I want us to bring to colleague is the philosophy, research philosophy. It's also good to state where you can get your philosophy based maybe from also the review what others might look at things. There are three different types of that. We have the positivism, looking at the reality, looking at things from the positive aspect, and also the interpretivism and the pragmatism. And the pragmatism philosophy looks at both just like when you have a BICS method, looking at both qualitative and quantitative. And one other important thing is the approach also under the methodology. Some studies are inductive and others are deductive, where some of the deductive starts with a theory, and then at the end of the day, you come on, you prove or test. For the inductive, you end up with a particular theory. So these are just key areas I just wanted to bring to maybe the attention on that methodology, which is necessary to state. Thank you.
Thank you for adding that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. As I said, different fields have maybe different ways in which the approach is given, and it's a good thing to mention that. And because sometimes you might end up missing out on that, and then you are told, you need to state those theories, or you need to state basically. How do you call it? Generally, under the approach, if there are specific theories, for example, as we talked talked about, for example, the theoretical framework, even if you are going to choose on a specific theory or you are going to, it has to be clear why you chose whatever you chose. You need to demonstrate why. In your methodology section, you need to state whatever decision you make and whatever methodology or whatever theory or whatever framework you are choosing, it has to be supported by some data, or it has to be supported by some reason. Why is it that you've decided to do this and not this? Why have you decided to adopt this and not the other? So I think it's a good thing that you have also brought that back to us. But then back to the discussion around pre-testing and piloting, I think we have had different perspectives about this. And as I said, sometimes we get the experiences and opinions about certain things, but then it's also up to us now to go back and also, try to dig deeper. But then the good thing is we already have been provided by a platform. We have been provided with a platform that has now made us understand that things could be different from the way maybe we conventionally look at them. And that's a good thing that now challenges us to even go and, dig deeper. Even for me, I will have to then go back and check whether there are like really fundamental differences between what we call a pre-test in a study and what we call piloting, so that when I will be having conversations or training people in future, I know when I'm going to give, state the differences. So I think based on the discussions we've had, it's up to me also to go back and check, is there any fundamental differences between when we talk about a pre-test and when we talk about piloting. These are things that I also go back and check. And I think one of the reasons why I told you that I also learn a lot from these training sessions, like all of us, I know most of us have picked up a tip or two. I'm very sure no one has left without even one tip. We have written proposals, we have written theses, we published papers, but then every time I attend trainings, I always get even just one new thing and say, okay, I've never thought about it this way. And also most of us here are either dealing with students or we are dealing with other researchers, and sometimes we need to guide them. When we get to this kind of discussions, it enriches our way of thinking about research, and you might pick a tip or two that can now inform your advice or inform your guidance to the students or other researchers that you work with. So that's why I always encourage people just to attend and see what you can pick out of it. Any other question or any other thing that we need to talk about? Could be a question, it could be a view, could be something, because there is something I want to demonstrate. Yes, Florence.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Florence, and I'm really interested to know maybe you could guide us on the use of retrospective data in academic research, because in my opinion, I think it is, if students can embark on that, and actually save time and resources. The other thing is, you talked about the old areas that are still viable. And for me, I think my study is one of those. And I've really had a challenge in getting an updated data. Data is available, but it's quite outdated. And sometimes I have a challenge on how to go about it. Thank you.
Okay, anybody wants to talk about retrospective data in research? That it could save time rather than going out there to get your own data. Yes, Dr. Franklin.
Okay, thank you for this question. I think that retrospective data is important, but will be more valid if the trends are comparable to prospective. So then for me, I really think that than to collect strict retrospective data and to really make good use of it, then we can see, for example, we can consider years, like many years, which embodies probably the present year or at least the last year. Now, this can permit people or other researchers to see the trends of whatever we are investigating. Let's just say from 2010 to 2025, or let's say from 2015 to 2025, we can at least see what was happening in 2015, 2016. Is there a progression? If, for example, it was a prevalence study, we can see if is there progression in the incidence or the prevalence, or is it dropping, which can show that maybe the measures that are put in place are helping, or is it increasing, which can give rise to recombination. So I think that retrospective data collection can be very important too, but it depends on how we design it, like the years that we include for the retrospective study. Because if, for example, we're in 2025 and a researcher conduct a retrospective study from, let's say, 2010 to 2020, it may be problematic because now we have 2021 right to 2025. This researcher now will not know what has been happening during this period. But if it is well designed, like say 2015 to 2024 or 2025, at least we are sure that the recent data that occurred will be captured. For example, in a retrospective study. Then in some cases, we advise that we conduct retrospective and prospective, and that prospective can just be for a short period of time now and help, but give the actual report about the situation, why it can now be comparable with what happened in the past. So to conclude what I think retrospective studies are still important and very important, but it depends on how we design these studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Franklin. I don't think I have to add much. It's about the design, and because it gives us a trend of what has been happening. But then, as you've rightly put it, if I do a retrospective study that ends in 2023, but then we are in 2025, then whoever I'm presenting this to will tell me there's a gap that is still there. So we still don't understand what is happening here. And then, as you've said, it would also help if we also combine this with prospective data, where we are going to say, okay, this is what I have up to 2024 or up to 2025 January. This is what was there. I want to see what actually is now happening so that I can compare whether actually what is currently happening is in line with what I have seen in the data that I have mined or in the study that I have had. Or is there anything that is peculiar, or is there anything that is really extraordinary about the times we are living in with regard to the kind of problem I'm trying to investigate? So it depends on how it is structured. But then it's not a bad thing that people do this. It's only that sometimes it's the guidance that we need. And it also depends on where you are getting data from, because sometimes getting data sets or getting information can also be a challenge. So that is what could also affect this. But also, when you are using data from other sources or you are doing retrospective studies, it depends so much on also your level of this synthesis of the data you are dealing with. So you could find that there is quite a lot of studies that have been done in a specific area, but then if you're not very good analytically, then you might end up either picking wrong information or picking information or leaving out very critical areas of your study that could have otherwise been highlighted if you had done it correctly. So it's just about how then it is structured. The other thing you talked about is an area that is an old area that still remains viable, and that's why maybe you want to update information on this. So as you try to do your literature review, for example, you realize you don't have a lot of information. Maybe if you can just give us a hint of what this area is, not the title of your research, but just an idea of the hint of this area.
The hint is like interprofessional collaboration among healthcare workers at primary healthcare levels.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens in these cases is, of course, there are certain areas where not much has been published, but then I think you can't tell us, or it's very difficult to find an area that completely has no research. Of course, you find that maybe you find research, but the research is old. In research, it has always been allowed that if you find that there's no literature that is linked directly
to your study, then you can borrow from relevant studies or related studies that maybe have been done elsewhere and try to bring them into your local context. So maybe you are trying to look at this, but then there are no studies that have been done in Kenya, which is maybe could be a gap. That the last thing that was talked about was before, for example, devolution of health services, just as an example. So you are saying, okay, there are studies that have been done, but they were done before devolution. So we know that the management and the structures of all these things after devolution might have changed. So we really want to see what really is the situation after devolution, as an example. So you realize if you are not going to get enough data, and it also depends on where you are looking for literature from. Where are you getting literature from? Are you just trying to find literature in one source, maybe Google Scholar or Science Direct or whichever place? So depends on other things, but sometimes it's true. Sometimes getting updated data in a specific area can be a challenge. So tomorrow we are going to look at what are the different places where we can get literature from, and then how then can we also read and summarize that literature. The other thing that I also want to ask is how many people use reference management tools, and which one do you use? Maybe you can just put it in the chat. Are there people who use reference managers, and or there are people who are still using referencing manually? Are you using reference managers? If yes, which ones? And if no, someone uses Mendeley, Zotero. How many people? Zotero. How many people still do their references manually? Yeah, I see. Yeah, like everyone at least is using a reference manager. I'm seeing Mendeley, Zotero. I see Mendeley and Zotero. Someone uses EndNote. Sometimes this, yeah, so somebody still does them. Sometimes they do manually. Sometimes they use reference managers. Yes. So I see like almost everyone. Yeah, like almost every. Yeah, when you say sometimes, it means that you know how to use. Sometimes you have to edit the reference manual in EndNote. Yeah. So I have someone is doing it manually. Still do manually. It's not a good use of your time. Just go and try out Mendeley or Zotero. They are very easy to use. So because then sometimes when you are working and then you are writing a paper or you are writing a proposal and then you have documents to reference, then it becomes very difficult for you to, if you are told to use APA and then you are told again change to something, it's difficult for you to do that if you are doing it manually, because then you are told there is a full stop after the first author's name, and then it's just going to be a lot of work. So try to teach yourself how to use at least a reference manager, because then that will save you a lot of time, or a lot of time. I have used Mendeley since 2012, and I have liked it. I've also tried using Zotero, of course, but I have always been more comfortable using Mendeley. I've used it for a long time. I think it also like, you know, when you have used a tool for long, you get so used to it and you get like almost hooked to it. So I use Mendeley quite a bit. Okay. I don't know which tool, but even if I'm going to demonstrate, then I can only demonstrate using Mendeley because it is the one that is installed on my laptop. It's not really difficult. I'm using it manually back in my. Mendeley is open source. I have been using Mendeley. Mendeley is open source. I don't know whether because it was bought by Elsevier, so I am very sure there are some aspects that they are saying. But then the reference and the other things are just, you know, open access. I want to spend 7 minutes trying to show you through this because I think there are people who might not be using it. So for Mendeley, I will start by sending a link to the chat where people can be able to download. Because then there's the Mendeley that is the Mendeley desktop that you have to download. So I'm just sending a link so that you can go and so that you can also practice when we meet tomorrow. You will give me feedback. I'm just sending a link. So just go to, so you can download Mendeley on this link and just install it in your computer. And then you can now be able to start using it. So I'll just share my screen and show you where to go to, how to start, because there are people who sometimes will be asking, where do I start after even that? So if you already know Mendeley, no problem. I think no knowledge is bad knowledge. You just bear with us because there are some of us who need that. So let's just help them. So just go and type Mendeley on your browser. So just type Mendeley. I think that's not the right spelling. Mendeley. So when you get here, just select the first option here. When you select the first option, I would expect you to create an account. Just create a free account, the way you could create an account anywhere. You know why you are creating an account on Mendeley Online? So that if you lose your computer, for example, you will download another Mendeley Online, and that Mendeley Online will help you. You can download. So if you have Mendeley on the internet, then when you put documents on your Mendeley desktop, it is backed up, it is synced online. So when you lose your computer, for example, not when, but if you lose your computer, for example, you will download Mendeley online on desktop, and then your library pretty much is just intact because it is backed up. That's why you need to create an account online. So mine, I have created an account and I have already then after creating an account, you will download Mendeley Reference Manager. But then I would want you to download the one through the link that I have sent. I will not tell you the reason, but I want you to download through that link, because Mendeley now has the version that you can use offline. But then if you don't know which one to download, you might download the Mendeley, the version that you can only use when you are online. So the one that I've sent you can use when you are offline and also when you are online, because most people use Mendeley offline. So it's better to download the link that can allow you to use Mendeley when you're offline. So once you download Mendeley through that link and create an account online, you will download Mendeley. Then you will now download Mendeley or a desktop and install. Once you download Mendeley and install it, this is what it will look like on your desktop. On your desktop, Mendeley will look something like this. So when you first open it, no, so when you open your Mendeley after downloading and installing it, you will have something that looks like this. So this is what you will see. So on the side here, you have your library. I'm just trying to see how we can make. Okay, so you'll have your library on the side. This is what your library looks like. But then you can create folders. You can see on the left here, you can create folders. So you can create a folder here and add documents. So when you want to add documents to Mendeley, just click on add, and then you will choose whether you want to add a folder or you want to add a folder or you want to add a file. So when you click on this arrow here, it gives you the chance of adding files or adding folders. So you can add a folder or you can add files. So let's say you had created a folder already. Let's say you have created a folder and given it a name. Just click on that folder, come and click here and add files. When you click on add files, it will allow you to give you the opportunity to go back to your computer and select the files that you want to add. So you just select and Control A, or you know, hold Control and select all the files you want to upload, and then they will all be uploaded onto Mendeley. So once you upload documents onto Mendeley, then now you will have documents that look like this. So Mendeley will automatically arrange it this way: the author's names, the title, the year the paper was published, and the journal where the paper was published. Mendeley will do this automatically. You don't need to do it. Once you upload a paper, Mendeley will extract all this information and arrange it just like this. Okay. Now, for you to be able to cite using Mendeley, immediately after downloading Mendeley, the first thing you need to do is click on Tools and then install MS Word plugin. This one is written and installed because it's already installed. So you will not be able to do citation using Mendeley if you have not installed MS Word plugin. So what I want to tell you, if you are downloading Mendeley for the first time when it is still new, after you downloaded Mendeley, after you've opened it, even before you add documents, I want you to click on Tools, then come and install MS Word plugin. Once you install it, this is what is going to integrate to your Word so that you can now be able to cite using Mendeley. Then you will be able to create folders and add whatever you want to add, everything else. And then now, I just want to demonstrate how then you will now use Mendeley for your citation. You have installed the MS Word plugin under Tools, and then now you have Mendeley open. So what do you do? I just want to show you here that yeah. So I hope my screen is visible to you. So this is the document. So let's say we are writing something on this document. Maybe this is the document we are working on. So we are writing something, and then we want to cite using Mendeley. What do I do? So this is where you need to take down a piece of, you take a piece of pen, or no, a pen and a piece of paper, because there are some things that will be laid on my screen and you will not see it on that side. So I will demonstrate, I will tell you what to write so that when you start working with Mendeley, you will be able to see them. You might not see them on my end because it will be laid on my screen, so you will not see it when I share my screen. So when you want to insert citation, when you are typing, put space and then go and click on references. Up here, I hope you are seeing, we have file, home, insert, draw, design, layout, references, mailings, review, view, help. Once you want to, when you get to a point where you want to do citation, put space, go and click on references. When you click on references, you see, you remember when we were doing, when we installed MS Word plugin, this is what it was doing. It was bringing this console here. So you see now we have a whole Mendeley working space in our Word. So when you get to the point where you want to cite, to do the citation, put space, click on references, then come and click insert citation here. Click insert citation. When you click insert citation, there's a dialog box that appears. That's why I was saying you might not be able to see it, but it lays on my screen. The dialog box that appears prompts me to go to Mendeley. So on that dialog box that will appear, if you know the title of the paper, you can type on that space. But if you don't know the title of the paper, just click go to Mendeley. Once you click on insert citation, on the dialog box that appears, click go to Mendeley. Then it will open the entire library for you. Okay, it will open the entire Mendeley library for you. Then click the paper that you want to cite, and then on the right, on the top left, there is just a place with there are two black quotation marks that are written CITE, cite. Click on those two black quotation marks, and then Mendeley will automatically cite that paper for you. Okay? Then you keep writing. You want to cite again, put space, click on references, click insert citation. On the dialog box that comes, click go to Mendeley. It will open the entire Mendeley library. Scroll down and click on the paper you want. But if you want to cite two papers at a time, click on the first paper, hold control, click on the second paper. Okay, click on the second paper, and even the third and the fifth if you want, but let's cite just 2 papers, 3 papers. Then just go and click on the on the 2 quotation marks that are written cite. When you cite, Mendeley will bring the citations. So you see, they are cited. Now you will just keep writing. Then when you go to your reference list, just under the reference list, just come under references again and click on insert bibliography. When you click on insert bibliography, you see Mendeley has now inserted our bibliography for us automatically. Now, the good thing is, how many citations do we have? Here, we have 3 citations. You want to see if we add any citation again, we don't need to do anything. Mendeley will automatically now just add those citations. We don't need to do anything. It will now just be doing it automatically for us. Let's just add a few other citations. When you cite, Mendeley now, you see now it has added it. So it just arranges it automatically for you, and it does it for you. But then you also want to talk about the style, the citation style. This one is APA, but let's say your university wants you to use Chicago, for example. See, it changes automatically. Or your university wants you to use Nature, or your university wants you to use Harvard, for example. Let's say Harvard here, or your university wants you to use whatever it is. You can just come here and change the style as you want, okay? I have seen someone's hand is up. Maybe let me just see who this is. Yes, Chris.
Volume so low. Volume.
Is my volume so low?
I think you were audible enough, but now it is going lower and lower. I don't know whether it is my network.
Maybe, yes, Agnes.
Doctor, you said you were sharing the app that we should upload mainly, but I can't see it on the other side of the charts.
I did that already. I'll just share it again.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that is basically the demonstration on how you use Mendeley. So once you download, install it, then you can now use it for citation. As I said, as you type, click on references, insert citation, the dialog box that comes, click go to Mendeley, it will open the library, click the paper you want to cite, click on the 2 black quotation marks that are written cite, click on it, it will cite the paper for you. Then when you go to references, just click on insert bibliography, it will insert the entire bibliography. Afterwards, every time now you cite, it will automatically be citing, it will automatically be growing your reference list without you doing anything. Okay, so basically that is the short form of that demonstration. I think also as you keep working with it, you will be able to get to understand how Mendeley works. Is a very simple tool to use. We are almost towards the end. We need to stop in the next 7 minutes. So if there are any feedback, if there is any, maybe not question at this point, unless it's about Mendeley, but then because tomorrow we are meeting again. But if there is anything that you want to say, then you can say it here. Also, if Kevina has any announcement she wants to make, then she can also make them as we head towards the end of our training.
Hello, Dr.
Yes, Kevin.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm also okay. Thank you. I've been following closely on the session, and I realize that they're quite informative, especially in the modern world of research. And especially for my context, I've been doing much of the researches on social sciences.
Yeah.
So this training, there are so many things that I've also learned in this forum. And I was even suggesting that if it were possible at the end of the training, we get the presentation or of the whole thing. Thank you.
Okay, you are welcome, and thank you for the kind words. I'm happy that you learned something out of this. As I said, I also never train people without ever learning anything. I always train, and at the end of it, I realize, hey, there's this one new thing. You remember when I'm now saying that I have to go and check whether there's really a difference between when somebody talk about pretesting and piloting. So that when next time I'm training, I have added something to it because it's a discussion that came up. So I'm happy that you got something out of this. Yes, Agnes.
Thank you so much, Dr. I've so much benefited from this kind of discussion. It's so informative and helpful. For me, I was trying to look for information online and from people one-on-one, but I've gathered a lot from this. Thank you.
You are welcome. Also, just to make it clear that the recordings of this will be shared, plus the materials that have been used here. So the presentations will be shared, even including the ones that will be used tomorrow. So don't worry. You will be, the recordings will be shared so that if you want to go back maybe and check a few things, you can easily go back and check. The presentation will be shared so that if you want also to use it in future, you can also use it. So yes, it will be, everything will be shared. Any other feedback? Maybe if Kavina has anything to say. Yes, Dr. Franklin.
All right. I want to thank you so much because I remember my colleagues kept telling me to learn to use the Mendeley or the Zotero because I'm so used to using my manual references because I always wanted to actually know very well and put the dot, the T's, the I's where I'm supposed to put, or the commas, the points, but then I've always been just reluctant to sit to learn the Mendeley, and I think I've learned a lot from this because I think in my next paper I'm going to use Mendeley. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You will appreciate it. Just go and try it. It's about trying it out. Some of these systems, when you try it, you get to learn a bit more about them. Sometimes it's also when somebody demonstrates this in 5 minutes, it's a bit rushed sometimes, but then you just go and try it out. It's a very simple system. You try it out and you realize, it does pretty much things very well. Brian is asking, what is your comparison of Mendeley and Zotero? I have used both, but I am so used to Mendeley because I have used it since 2012. So you can imagine the number of years I've used Mendeley. So I've found Mendeley easier to use than Zotero. I'm not saying Zotero is not a good system, but I have used Mendeley for a long time. I still use Zotero from time to time, but Mendeley has been the best for me. So if you ask me, Mendeley works better for me than Zotero. Yes, Kevina, I want to give you the chance to make any announcements as we stop this here.
Thank you so much, Nicholas, for the amazing session. And I just have a few announcements to add on what you had said. The recordings and the presentations are going to be shared after the training. That's going to be tomorrow. And then for those who have not filled in the attendance list, kindly do so. The link is in the chat. Please fill your names as you'd like to appear in the certificates. And also please note that the certificates are going to be issued for those who attend both training days, just to reflect your commitment to this training. So aside from that, if you have any inquiries, feel free to reach out to the admin email that I'm sharing shortly in the chat box. And also if you have any additional feedback on how this session was, please feel free to tag us on the social media platforms on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Also, you can share on the community on WhatsApp or as well in the email that I'm sharing shortly. So thank you so much. I'll leave this room open for around 2 minutes for you to get whatever information you need from the chat and then end it. Thank you all for your attendance. For those joining us just now, the training has ended for today, but please note that the recordings will be available tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you for organizing this kind of training.
Thank you so much for your feedback.
Mhm.